Welcome to my channel. In my channel you can watch various type of fiction and fantasy audiobook. If you want more video like this, please subscribe my channel.
High School DxD 3 Years of Cohabitation. Part 5. Ajuka Beelzebub could not help but sigh. He picked out what he could use from the dragon reincarnation and deleted the remaining memory fragments on the spot. His gaze wavered, looking a bit dazed, and it took several seconds for him to return to normal. Let's put personal matters aside for now. What do you want to ask? The Underworld's intelligence network isn't bad. There isn't much in the three realms that can be hidden from you. It's certainly not bad, but we can't get a handle on this mess that is the Chaos Brigade. Ajuka Beelzebub spoke up. Chaos Brigade. Luo Yu rubbed his chin and said slowly, since you know that name, you should also be aware that I am one of them. The four great emperors and the old Satan faction are the two largest forces within the Chaos Brigade. Rizvam Levon Lucifer is also involved. As for your boss, Ajuka Beelzebub suddenly lowered his voice, his tone tinged with wariness, the infinite dragon god, Ophis. You know quite a bit. This can hardly be called a blind spot. But let me mention one thing. The old Satan faction isn't just that bunch of lunatics from your underworld, there are people from heaven and the Grigori involved as well. Thanks. But, Ajuka Beelzebub shook his head. We don't know enough. Especially those old Satan faction members, they are a thorn in the side of the underworld. When Rizvam Levon Lucifer, Zeus, and Loki made their move last time, the infinite dragon god Ophis was there too, right? Ajuka Beelzebub stared at Luo Yu. She was protecting you from the shadows. If Cao Cao and the others couldn't hold them off, and the dragons didn't arrive in time, she would have been your final trump card. Who can say for sure? Luo Yu smiled enigmatically. He neither admitted nor denied it. Let Ajuka Beelzebub guess whatever he wanted. What you want to inquire about must be the hideouts of the old Satan faction or the base of the Chaos Brigade. Red Dragon Emperor, how about we make a deal? Let's hear it. Luo Yu also wanted to see what the underworld was really planning. Our underworld will help you take out Rizvam Levon Lucifer, as well as the old Satan faction that is at odds with your four great emperors. You, or rather, all of you, just need to hold off Ophis. Clap, clap, clap. Luo Yu couldn't help but clap his hands a few times. The underworld's plan is really well calculated. The old Satan faction and Rizvam Levon Lucifer have always been a major headache for you. If you let me hold off Ophis while you wipe them all out in one go, the underworld will be worry-free in the future. Ajuka Beelzebub didn't make a sound, waiting for Luo Yu's confirmation. After a long while, Luo Yu glanced at Ajuka Beelzebub and finally said, no matter how I look at it, I'm the one getting the better deal. I'll keep an eye on Ophis for you. Just don't disappoint me, Underworld. Of course, it seemed that at this very moment, the Underworld and Luo Yu had unilaterally sealed the fate of the old Satan faction. In the villa garden at dawn, Tsubaki Shinra gripped her long sword, slashing again and again. Sweat slid down her forehead, dripping onto the stone floor beneath her feet. Her clothes were soaked, and the muscles in her arms trembled slightly as she swung the blade, clearly having reached her limit. Yet, she didn't stop, she gritted her teeth and continued to swing. In the bamboo pavilion, Luo Yu leaned against a pillar, his gaze fixed on Tsubaki Shinra. Sona sat on a stone stool, picked up her teacup, took a sip, and said, she's been training like this for more than a day or two, she hasn't stopped since the last battle ended. Luo Yu nodded. Even with the strong self-healing ability of a devil, she's reaching her limit at this rate. Sona frowned and put down the teacup. If she continues like this, I'm afraid she will suffer hidden injuries, which will be difficult to treat later on. Luo Yu didn't reply, just quietly watching the figure in the garden drenched in sweat. He could, of course, see that there was a reason Tsubaki Shinra was pushing herself so hard. On the other hand, Luo Yu had already calculated everything regarding the mess of the Chaos Brigade. He didn't feel there was any problem with betraying the Chaos Brigade. To put it bluntly, the Chaos Brigade was just a group of losers using Ophis's power as a tool. That bunch from the old Satan faction spent their days dreaming of retaking the underworld's throne by relying on the snakes given by Ophis. And they claimed they would defeat the Great Red. If a real fight broke out, even including Rizvam Levon Lucifer, if all these people were added together, they probably wouldn't even be able to withstand a single breath from the Great Red. Of course, if one calculated seriously, the four great emperors weren't any better. 3 out of the 4 were undercover agents. Giulio Gesualdo was the biggest mole. He was originally sent to the Chaos Brigade by Heaven. Valley joined the Chaos Brigade purely to become stronger and challenge the Great Red. As for Cao Cao, it goes without saying, he just wanted to carry out the will of a hero and fight the god and demon races to the bitter end. After Luo Yu and Ajuka Beelzebub finished discussing the overall layout, he informed Cao Cao and the others about the matter. Cao Cao and Valley had no objections. They had long been displeased with Rizvam Levon Lucifer and the old Satan faction, and this time, using the underworld's hands to take care of them would save them the trouble. Valley even said that if it weren't for his lack of strength, he would have wanted to kill Rizvam Levon Lucifer himself. As for Giulio Gesualdo, his opinion could basically be ignored. Ever since his identity as a child of light and a half-angel was exposed, the Chaos Brigade had already kicked him out as a traitor. Now they just needed to wait for the underworld to finish its secret deployment. There were quite a few members of the old Satan faction hidden in the underworld, and Ajuka Beelzebub's intention was to take this opportunity to wipe out these hidden dangers in one fell swoop. In the garden, Tsubaki Shinra delivered another fierce slash. The blade cut through the air, emitting a sharp whistle. She bent over, supporting herself on her knees, panting heavily, sweat dripping from her chin to the ground. Yet, she only paused for less than 10 seconds before straightening up again and raising her sword. Sona glanced at Luo Yu, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of her lips. You know it too. Compared to me, she is more willing to listen to you. Thanks, Sona. Why are you being so polite with me? I'll leave Tsubaki Shinra to you. My sister is about to wake up, so I need to go back. Having said that, Sona stood up and left. Clang. The long sword in Tsubaki Shinra's hand slid to the ground, her whole body aching as if it had fallen apart. It's no use. If I remain this weak, I won't be able to keep up with Master's footsteps at all. She gritted her teeth, wanting to bend over to pick up the sword, but even her fingers were trembling. A large hand snatched the sword away directly and patted her on the shoulder. The heavy burdens and arcane magic suppression on her body were instantly lifted. I gave you arcane magic to give you another way to save your life, not for you to use it to risk your life. Luo Yu looked at the wear and tear on Tsubaki Shinra's body, his tone stern. This is simply reckless. Master, I just want to be a little stronger, even if it's just enough to block a few enemies for you. Tsubaki Shinra lowered her head, her voice filled with grievance. After the great battle that day, she realized how weak she was. Especially when Zeus delivered the final blow, watching her master disappear before her eyes, she had completely broken down. Her mind went blank, her chest hurt as if it were being torn apart, and she almost couldn't hold on. Luo Yu sighed. His palm gently stroked her loose long hair, his movements filled with comfort and heartache. Little Tsubaki, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Cultivation is like sailing against the current, but if you are this impatient, you will only burn out your potential prematurely. You won't get far. Your master is very strong. For now, it is my job to protect you. When you are truly grown up, it won't be too late to help me. Tsubaki Shinra bit her lip, was silent for a moment, then looked up at him earnestly. Master, I want to undergo dragon reincarnation. A dragon reincarnation like yours. Luo Yu's brows knitted together instantly. He hadn't expected Tsubaki Shinra to have this thought. Looking at her expression, it wasn't something she had just thought of today, she had probably been pondering it for a long time. But dragon reincarnation, just as Ajuka Beelzebub said, was far too dangerous and simply not suitable for others. Moreover, when he originally developed this technique, it was tailored entirely to his own physical condition. Tsubaki Shinra had already reincarnated as a devil once, and now she wanted to reincarnate from a devil into a dragon species. The danger involved was several times higher than what he had faced. No, it was absolutely not possible. Little Tsubaki, dragon species are not for you. Don't blindly pursue it just because you see superficial strength. A few leisurely months flashed by, and life was so peaceful that not even a few splashes were made. If one had to say anything, it would be that the devil girl Seraphal, who was always looking for trouble, was still jumping around. Her resentment toward Luo Yu kept accumulating, and even though she had been disciplined by the Eternal Kingdom several times, the girl still refused to change her ways. Ever since he comprehended the origin gold pattern, Luo Yu naturally didn't have to bury himself in hard training like before, and he suddenly had a lot of free time on his hands. He spent all this time teaching the three of them, Tsubaki Shinra, and Rei Kusaka. In the end, it was mainly to guard against that girl Tsubaki Shinra, fearing she would stubbornly try to challenge her physical limits again. In the evening, under the bamboo pavilion in the garden, Luo Yu and Sona sat face to face, trading moves on the chessboard, which was a unique way for the two to cultivate their relationship. Sona, you lost again. Luo Yu picked up a black piece and decisively swallowed the path of Sona's white pieces. He had won this game today as well. I was so careful, yet I was still calculated to death by you. Sona stared at the endgame in front of her, her face full of frustration. In these 3 days, except for one time when she was incredibly lucky and beat Luo Yu, every other time she had been wiped out without a trace. Sona's chess skills had indeed improved quite a bit under Luo Yu's step-by-step teaching, but in things like chess, it was only interesting if wins and losses alternated. Losing all the time, if it weren't for Sona's stable mindset, she would have probably been discouraged from playing chess long ago. Of course, this was also her own fault for having fiercely warned Luo Yu earlier, telling him absolutely not to go easy on her and to go all out. Your chess style is too direct, it's more interesting to have more variety. There are only a few old-fashioned patterns, and it's easy to have your mind figured out. Sometimes, adapting to circumstances is better than just stubbornly thinking about the next move. Luo Yu placed the remaining pieces on the chessboard back into their original positions one by one. One more game. Just as Sona and Luo Yu were about to start a new game, an urgent, delicate shout suddenly came from outside the door. Luo Yu, get out here right now. Rias Grimori. Sona recognized the owner of the voice instantly. Luo Yu raised an eyebrow. Were there too many people coming to find trouble lately? It had only been a few months. A while ago it was Serafal. This time it was Rias Grimori's turn. According to Sona, the Grimori clan had clearly warned Rias Grimori fiercely not to provoke him. In the first floor living room. Yo, little Rias Grimori, why did you run over here? Did that guy, the Red Dragon Emperor, provoke you? Serafal looked at Rias Grimori, who had rushed in hurriedly, and greeted her. Lady Serafal, where is Luo Yu? Rias Grimori scanned left and right, looking for him everywhere. He is currently. Before Serafal could finish her sentence, Luo Yu and Sona had already appeared in the living room. Luo Yu frowned and was about to speak, but Rias Grimori cut him off first. Luo Yu, where did you hide Kaneko? Hurry up and give her back to me. Rias Grimori rushed forward and grabbed Luo Yu by the collar. Luo Yu was stunned. Rias Grimori actually dared to make a move on him. And Kaneko went missing. How did this get dragged onto his head again? He had only killed one of her subordinates before. Why did she always pin the blame on him whenever something happened to her subordinates? His expression turned cold in an instant. Rias Grimori, calm down. Luo Yu has been with me all day today. Sona sensed that Luo Yu was already losing patience and quickly spoke up to soothe Rias Grimori. Just then, Tsubaki Shinra arrived with 3 people. Behind her followed 2 people, one big and one small. The older one was naturally Akino Himehima. The smaller one was a strange little loli with long, deep purple hair and golden eyes, holding a scythe with skull decorations hanging on it, looking quite cute. But the look she gave Luo Yu held a hint of fear, as well as a trace of almost imperceptible resentment. A reaper. Serafal stared at the little loli, feeling a bit confused. Last time, when the Red Dragon Emperor ambushed Hades, god of the underworld, hadn't he wiped out all the reapers in one go? How was there one left? And this one had even reincarnated into one of Rias Grimori's subordinates. Her name is Benia, a half-human, half-reaper hybrid. She is currently Rias Grimori's subordinate, serving as a knight, Akino Himehima explained from the side. Luo Yu glanced at her, but had little interest. He vaguely remembered that this Reaper loli was supposed to be Sona's knight. He hadn't expected Rias Grimori to get to her first. Rias Grimori, Benia and I have turned Kuo town upside down, but we couldn't find the Chiron who took Kaneko away, Akano Himahima said to Rias Grimori. Chiron. Tsubaki Shinra paused. That name sounded familiar. Wasn't that the lazy woman who spoke without thinking? She had already disappeared before Master went to ambush Hades, god of the underworld. Besides, she took Kaneko away, but what does that have to do with my master? Tsubaki Shinra asked, looking completely puzzled. Oh my, that has everything to do with it. That person named Chiron said herself that she snatched a little wife back for Ayu. Akano Himahima opened her eyes slightly, glaring at Luo Yu with a faint, mocking smile. Luo Yu's face stiffened. That lazy cat who loved causing trouble could go out and stir things up all she wanted, but she didn't have to use his name to make him take the fall. I didn't tell her to snatch Kaneko. Even if she did, she wouldn't hurt Kaneko, Luo Yu said casually. But as Kaneko's master, Rias Grimori would not accept his explanation so easily. Ayu, who exactly is that Chiron? Why do you say she wouldn't hurt Kaneko? Akano Himahima asked on Rias Grimori's behalf. In the current situation, it was better not to let Rias Grimori speak. Ever since Kiba Yudo was taken out, the relationship between the two of them had been very tense. Chiron is Kaneko's real name. Haven't you ever suspected anything? As for the Chiron you speak of, she is actually Kaneko's older sister, the stray devil, Kuroka. Kuroka? It's her. Rias Grimori knew of Kuroka. She was Kaneko's older sister. It was because this woman defected that Kaneko had been implicated and suffered immense pressure from the outside world. She refused to use her Nekomata powers anymore and had become withdrawn. Kuroka was also the most dangerous wanted criminal in the underworld. A stray devil. Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka exchanged glances. They really hadn't expected that the Chiron, the Kuroka their master spoke of, was actually a stray devil. Weren't stray devils all twisted and perverted things? Apart from being a bit daring, Kuroka didn't seem particularly special. Kuroka is an SS class wanted criminal in the underworld who even killed her own master with her own hands. If Kaneko is with her, something could happen at any moment. Rias Grimori stared at Luo Yu, her eyes filled with fury. After Kuroka defected, the high-ranking officials of the underworld claimed that Kaneko was just as dangerous as her sister and intended to dispose of her as well. It was only thanks to Sears's Lucifer stepping in to vouch for her that Kaneko was handed over to her care and supervision. If the underworld found out that Kaneko was hanging around with Kuroka again, the proposal from back then would certainly be brought up again. Even if Kuroka wouldn't hurt a hair on Kaneko's head, Kaneko would sooner or later be treated as a stray devil just like her sister and be hunted by the underworld. Power loss of control. Luo Yu knew clearly why Kuroka had betrayed them and sneered. It was just those people in the underworld wanting to cover up their shame, dumping all the blame on Kuroka. And now they have the nerve to call her a dangerous wanted criminal. The way the underworld plays is truly dirty. This remark was practically an indiscriminate attack. Even Sona's expression was a bit awkward. Everyone present, except for Luo Yu who was of the dragon race, was from the underworld, not to mention that there was a demon king presiding here. Tsubaki Shinra and the others were fine, as they had only recently reincarnated as devils and their sense of belonging to the underworld was still far off. Rias Grimori, don't look at me with that cannibalistic expression. If you don't believe me, just ask this demon king here. She knows better than anyone how many dirty things those purebloods of the Nibirius clan have done. Luo Yu glanced at Rias Grimori. Lady Seraphal, sister. Rias Grimori and Sona looked at Seraphal simultaneously, their faces full of questions. Listening to what Luo Yu meant, was there really some hidden story behind Kuroka killing her master and defecting? Little Rias Grimori, little Sona. Seraphal hesitated. After the high-ranking officials of the underworld banned the Nibirius clan, they issued a gag order, forbidding anyone from mentioning the matter again. But the Red Dragon Emperor had a big mouth and leaked everything, it couldn't be hidden anymore. Even if she didn't speak, this guy would likely spill it all anyway. The Red Dragon Emperor is not wrong, this is indeed a scandal of the underworld. When they sent people to capture Kuroka back then, they never intended to take her alive, but rather planned to silence her directly and bury those dirty secrets completely. It's just that everyone who went was slaughtered by Kuroka. Rias Grimori frowned tightly. Lady Seraphal, what exactly happened? Can you explain it clearly? If she could figure out why Kuroka had betrayed them in the first place, she might be able to follow the clues and find Kaniko's whereabouts. Rias Grimori knew in her heart that the hope was slim, but she and Akino Himehime had still turned the whole of Kuo town upside down. They hadn't found her, but even if she only had one breath left, she would not abandon Kaniko. At that time, the civil war of the devils in the underworld had just ended not long before. The Nibirius clan wanted to gain more power in the underworld, so they secretly conducted a stupid and crazy experiment called Acquired Super Devil. Super Devil. This was the first time Rias Grimori and Sona had heard this term. Their strength was still far from enough to access information at this level. Simply put, they are guys who break through racial limitations and stand at the very top of the world. Like Ajuka Beelzebub and Searsex Lucifer, they are both super devils among devils, Luo Yu explained. Zeus of the Greek pantheon, Fenrir, the wolf that kills gods, and Thor, the god of thunder from Norse mythology, the three supreme gods of India, plus Indra from the east. Super devils are basically famous big shots in mythology. Sona and her group felt a tightness in their hearts. In the great battle a while ago, Zeus and Fenrir had both intervened. Were the four great emperors, like Cao Cao, who had fought them, also super devils? Luo Yu saw through their thoughts and said calmly, "If I go all out, I do indeed have the combat power of a super devil. Cao Cao and Valley count as quasi-super devils, and while Dulio Gesualdo hasn't reached that level yet, he is not far off." This was the first time they had directly understood Luo Yu's true trump cards. Although they were shocked, they were not too surprised. Acquired super devil. Sona calmed down and began to organize her logic. No wonder my sister said it was crazy and stupid. A little thought makes it clear that a being like a super devil cannot be created through experiments. So, Kuroka and Kaniko were the products of that Nibirius clan experiment. That is also why Kuroka killed her master. Later, after Kuroka ran away, the matter blew up, and the high-ranking officials of the underworld investigated and shut down the experiment. Little Sona, that's pretty much the logic. Kuroka killed her master to protect her sister, Kaniko, Serafal added. Rias Grimori found it hard to accept. Then what about Kuroka's power going out of control? Was the underworld deliberately smearing her? The more she thought about it, the more she felt something was wrong. In this light, both Kaniko and Kuroka were victims. The underworld wanted to dispose of Kaniko not because she was dangerous, but simply to cover up the scandal. The loss of control was real, but not as exaggerated as they claimed, Luo Yu said indifferently. There were plenty of messed up things in the underworld, and Kuroka's affair barely caused a ripple. The civil war was the real chaos. Frankly speaking, devils killing each other was the biggest scandal, but no one dared to bring it up in public. So, that's how it is. Rias Grimori looked as if all her strength had been drained, the momentum she had just now was gone. Only then did she realize that the Grimori clan wasn't clean either. In the end, her family was also part of the high-ranking officials and had been involved in that muddy water quite a bit. Tsubaki Shinra and the others were stunned by this dark history, their jaws nearly dropping. But I will say it again, I will not let go of Kaniko's matter. Rias Grimori clenched her fists, her voice heavy. Rias Grimori. A voice crashed down from upstairs. Sharon is not your possession. You don't have the qualifications to be her master either. Looking up, Kuroka had actually walked out of a room on the 4th floor. That was Luo Yu's room. Luo Yu's face fell instantly, and he pulled a wry smile. This lazy cat really knew how to pick her moment to exploit a loophole. This cat really knew how to seize an opportunity. She had actually sneaked into his room. When he was cultivating last time, he had carved a bunch of hiding and shielding runes there, but he hadn't added any defense or perception ones. He had done all those fancy tricks before to hide his identity, but it ended up benefiting this lazy cat, Kuroka, allowing her to slip in silently. With those runes providing cover, Rias Grimori and the others wanted to find Kuroka in Kuo town. Keep dreaming. The effects of those runes could fool even a super devil, let alone Rias Grimori and the others. Even he, the one who carved the runes, would ignore them if he didn't deliberately try to sense them. Akino Himehime and the others looked at him with playful eyes. After Kuroka came out of the room, they had noticed a tiny bit of Kaniko's aura leaking from the door crack. Kaniko was indeed hiding here. When Rias Grimori stormed over to get angry earlier, she really hadn't wrongly accused him. Kuroka, the underworld did you wrong a few years ago, and it did Kaneko wrong too. Rias Grimori raised her head, staring fixedly at Kuroka. But it is also a fact that you left Kaneko in the underworld and didn't care about her. If my brother hadn't stepped in to vouch for her, Kaneko would have long been disposed of as a stray devil. Rias Grimori stood at the top of the stairs, staring at Kuroka who was walking down, her tone very unconvinced. If your underworld pursuit team hadn't been in the way back then, Sharon would have been taken away by me long ago. Taken away? Rias Grimori's expression sank, and then become a stray devil with you, being hunted by the underworld. Kuroka snorted, her face full of disdain. These messes, aren't they all caused by your underworld? She narrowed her eyes, her tone sharp. Rias Grimori, listen well. Sharon is my sister. I cannot possibly hand her over to you. After a pause, Kuroka's voice lowered, her expression dimming slightly. Besides, her condition isn't very good right now. Rias Grimori's heart tightened. What's wrong with Sharon? Now was not the time to argue over ownership. Sharon's health was what mattered most. Besides, for the past few days, she had felt that something was off with Sharon, as if she were desperately suppressing something. Her face always carried an unnatural flush. Luo Yu glanced toward the room, his perception spreading out instantly. The small, curled-up figure on the bed appeared clearly in his consciousness. Even in her sleep, her brows were tightly furrowed, her breathing rapid and heavy, with a strange energy rampaging within her body. It's the senjutsu of a Nekomata, it's going berserk. Among the Nekomata clan, the Nekomata are the strongest branch, naturally possessing a special talent for senjutsu. Such yokai are rare even in the Far East. Luo Yu had only seen two, Kuroka, and the one before him. That's right, Sharon's senjutsu has lost control. Kuroka nodded, her eyes full of worry. She has always been afraid of this power and suppressed it tightly. She suppressed it too hard, and once it erupted, she couldn't control it. I tried using senjutsu to help her channel it, but it was useless. Instead, it made her even more chaotic. Rias Grimori looked toward Luo Yu's room, her voice anxious. Then what should we do? Kuroka didn't reply, simply turning her gaze toward Luo Yu. Luo Yu understood her meaning immediately. You want me to use the power of the dragon race to help Sharon suppress the out-of-control senjutsu. Dragon species naturally have a suppression effect on yokai. No matter how strong the senjutsu is, it has to bow to dragon power. It truly has a natural advantage for smoothing out rampaging yokai power. Kuroka nodded, licked her lips, and smiled seductively. Finding Valley could also help stabilize Sharon's condition, but, so that she can give birth to strong little dragon cubs in the future, it's better if you do it yourself. After all, your dragon lineage is much purer than that guy's. Sona and the others heard this, but there was no surprise on their faces. Clearly, they were long used to her speaking like this. Sharon was curled up on the bed, her forehead covered in cold sweat, her body twitching from time to time. Luo Yu stood by the bed, his gaze sweeping over the four women surrounding them. Akano Himahima, Kuroka, Rias Grimori, Sona, not a single one missing. Don't be nervous, Yu, we'll just watch from the side and won't disturb you while you help her regulate her senjutsu. Akano Himahima propped up her chin with a smile, her tone of voice incredibly gentle. But the coldness hidden in those eyes made no attempt to hide itself. Luo Yu knew clearly in his heart. What? Watching, it was clearly to keep an eye on him. He shook his head helplessly, truly unable to understand just how much of a beast he was in their eyes. How old was this Sharon before him? The Sharon from 3 years ago was basically just a little thing that hadn't grown up yet. He wasn't depraved enough to reach this level. Luo Yu gently placed his hand on Sharon's forehead, the dragon power within him slowly surging out, seeping into her body bit by bit. The restless senjutsu seemed to have met its nemesis, and was quickly smoothed out and made obedient. Sharon's tightly furrowed brows gradually smoothed out, and the pain on her face disappeared along with it. Just as Luo Yu was about to withdraw his hand, he suddenly felt something furry wrap around his arm. Sharon's tail. It had hooked onto his wrist at some point, the tip of the tail gently rubbing against his skin, as if expressing some happy emotion. Meow, I told you, Sharon is definitely willing. Wouldn't it be great to give birth to a strong dragon-kin baby? Kuroko was egging him on from the side again, looking like she wouldn't give up. Luo Yu couldn't be bothered to pay attention to her, carefully unwrapped the tail, and turned to walk out. Let her sleep quietly for a while. Kuroko watched the tail retracting reluctantly, her face full of regret. If she couldn't do it, there was still Sharon, she would succeed eventually. As soon as Luo Yu left, Sharon's breathing completely steadied, and she fell into a deep sleep. Not long after, a holy light suddenly shone in the room. Michael's invitation had arrived. In the villa's hall, Luo Yu looked at Giulio Gesualdo sitting opposite him, somewhat surprised. The Chaos Brigade is looking for trouble with you all over the world. You're not hiding in heaven, yet you dare to show yourself in the human world. Aren't you here? Giulio Gesualdo picked up the dessert the maid had brought, eating it with relish. If they dare to come, you can send them away. He hadn't put the Chaos Brigade's pursuit in his heart at all. Unless Ophis or Rizvam Levon Lucifer made a move personally. As for the rest of those small fry, wanting to keep Giulio Gesualdo behind was pure dreaming. Besides, ever since Rizvam Levon Lucifer revealed his tracks last time, the underworld has been searching the whole world for his whereabouts. By comparison, Giulio Gesualdo actually felt the human world was several times safer than heaven. On the other side, Rias Grimori was fuming inside. Ever since she arrived in the human world and met Luo Yu, her luck had never been good. Kiba Yuto was dead. She had to swallow this anger in frustration, unable to even say a harsh word. Now, Sharon was also left in that villa of Sona's. Looking at it, she was almost becoming Sona's servant. Looking at Akino Himahima beside her, Rias Grimori didn't need to think much. As long as Luo Yu beckoned, this woman would definitely throw her good friend behind her head at the first opportunity. Truly valuing men over friends. She counted on her fingers. The remaining servants in her hand were only the newly recruited half-blood Reaper Benia, and the shut-in Gasper. Thinking that her biggest purpose for coming to the human world for training was to gather servants and prepare for the raiding game with Riser Finex in 3 years. Only by winning that duel could she annul the engagement. But look at this. She had recruited 1 servant, but the number of people had decreased by 3. The more Rias Grimori thought about it, the angrier she got. Her eyes looking at Luo Yu were full of resentment. Luo Yu had no idea what Rias Grimori was thinking. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. The guest before him was much more interesting than that woman. Heaven. Giulio Gesualdo lay lazily on the clouds, chewing on a spiritual herb he had plucked from somewhere. I say, those guys from the old Satan faction won't be able to hop around for much longer. He rolled over, looking at the unchanging golden glow above his head. Last time, the underworld had already declared they would deal with them, should his group get involved and fish for some benefits. Ever since he ambushed Hades, god of the underworld with Luo Yu and the others, he had been trapped in heaven running errands for the past few months. The scenery of heaven was indeed beautiful, but he had been looking at this stuff since he was born. After looking at it for nearly 20 years, no matter how beautiful, he was sick of it. Especially since there was no change at all. Forget it, talk about it when the time comes. Anyway, Master wouldn't necessarily let him leave. You came to find me just to say this nonsense. Luo Yu sat on a stone chair, looking at Giulio Gesualdo, who was still chattering away with his mouth full. This guy's biggest hobby was finding food all over the world. Keeping him cooped up in one place was truly a torture. I'm here to run an errand. Giulio Gesualdo swallowed the food in his mouth. Master asked me to invite you to go to heaven. Your master. Luo Yu was stunned for a moment, his mind turning. Michael. He didn't seem to have any friendship with that archangel. If he had to say, it was only twice. One time was forcibly extracting the essence blood of the holy light dragon. The other time was going to steal the primal dragon soul of the primal darkness dragon Apophis, which ended up attracting a siege by the 3 seraphs. Don't worry, it's not to settle accounts with you. Giulio Gesualdo waved his hand. The 4 of them had been adventuring in the 3 realms for so many years, they could understand the little schemes in each other's hearts with just one look. Luo Yu thought for a moment and nodded. If Michael really wanted to deal with him, he wouldn't use a stupid method like inviting him to heaven. Once the matter was exposed, heaven's reputation of thousands of years would be completely ruined. Who would dare to accept an invitation from heaven in the future? They would all have to weigh whether it was a trap first. To be honest, Luo Yu had always felt that heaven was much more dangerous than the underworld. Even if the underworld mobilized its entire nest, they couldn't keep him. But heaven was different. No one knew how many trump cards that God had left for heaven when he was still around. Giulio Gesualdo was one of the top spatial coordinate experts in heaven. He raised his hand and tore open a passage directly to heaven in Kuo town. Luo Yu followed him and stepped in, carefully feeling it. This passage was very stable, even stronger than the one he had snatched from the fallen angels before. You have to know, this one of Giulio Gesualdo's was temporarily built, not a ready-made old route. Being able to build a passage of this quality in such a short time, this kid's understanding of spatial laws was definitely top tier. Not long after, the white light ahead became more and more blinding. When Luo Yu adapted to the light, the ridiculously magnificent scenery of heaven had already appeared before his eyes. The eighth layer. Luo Yu scanned the surroundings. He had never been here before. Compared to the seventh layer, the difference could be seen at a glance. The concentration of light elements was at least 10 to 20% higher. There were patrolling angels everywhere, among which 5 winged angels accounted for a significant proportion, all of whom were Mao-class combat power. If you only look at the number of Mao-class powerhouses, the underworld and Grigori combined probably couldn't catch up to heaven. Back then, the main god perished together with the first generation 4 great demon kings of the underworld, taking away a large number of pure-blooded devils and the backbone of Grigori, but heaven's foundation was basically not damaged much. The most obvious point, all 4 seraphs were fine, not a single one missing. Of course, after the main god fell, heaven could no longer naturally give birth to pure-blooded angels. The remedy they came up with was to rely on humans to create children of light, like Giulio Gesualdo and half-blood angels, to replenish fresh blood. Compared to the devil reincarnation of the underworld, this method's efficiency was not just a little bit worse. What was more troublesome was that the probability of these half-blood angels falling into fallen angels was quite high, and in the end, it actually benefited Grigori. Giulio Gesualdo pointed forward, where the temple built of white stone stood quietly. My master is inside, and that is also the central system that God left in this world. Luo Yu took a few looks. The ones patrolling around the temple were all 5 winged angels, each as strong as a devil king. Heaven's system, huh, I thought it was hidden in the 9th layer, didn't expect it to be placed in the 8th layer. It was indeed in the 9th layer before. But after God fell, Master felt that God's resting place should not be disturbed, so he sealed the 9th layer and moved the system to this layer. After Giulio Gesualdo finished explaining, he added another sentence. Luo Yu, go in yourself. Without my master's nod, not even Lady Gabriel and the others can break in casually. Luo Yu responded and walked toward the temple. The patrolling 5 winged angels had long known that the Red Dragon Emperor was coming, so no one stopped him. They automatically cleared a path straight to the main gate. Only after Luo Yu's figure completely disappeared into the temple did the angels resume their patrol. Giulio Gesualdo stood in place, gazing at the white temple with a complex expression. Master, do you truly wish to leave a way out for the heaven, or do you want to recast the entire heaven? He whispered to himself, his voice quickly swallowed by the wind. There was no light inside the temple. It was pitch black, and one could not even see their own hand. Then, the surroundings suddenly changed. Luo Yu found himself standing in the midst of a vast, desolate world. The ground beneath his feet was cracked, with dried-up riverbeds everywhere. Countless human kingdoms were situated on the land, and one could see devils, fallen angels, and magical beasts hidden within them. Some even revealed their true forms, enjoying the fear or worship of mortals. The sky was much higher than it is now, and from time to time, giant dragons would soar through the clouds. Is this a scene from the ancient era? Luo Yu realized that everything before him must be someone's memory. Since Michael had invited him, this memory was most likely Michael's own. He did not know why Michael wanted to show him this ancient scene, but he did not shatter it directly. Given his current strength, collapsing this illusion would be easy, but he did not do so. Just then, an anomaly occurred on the ground beneath his feet. A massive magical beast emerged. The thing had 10 heads, dragon heads, tiger heads, snake heads, leopard heads, various animal heads pieced together. Its body was the same, as if it had been forcibly stitched together from countless different animal corpses. All 10 heads roared wildly at the sky simultaneously. The sky shattered. Heaven was actually faintly visible through it. The baleful aura on the magical beast exploded, and countless human kingdoms instantly turned into dead zones. Whether they were humans, devils, magical beasts, angels, fallen angels, or even gods, in the face of death, there was no difference. The human world shook violently. The various pantheons attached to the human world were all shaken out, divine realms emerged in the mortal world, and divine light illuminated the mountains and rivers for 10,000 miles. Luo Yu was completely stunned. He could not believe that such a terrifying thing existed in this world, it was simply a living nightmare. A name vaguely surfaced in his mind, the Beast Emperor. Luo Yu watched with wide eyes. Wherever that massive body passed, human nations were turned directly into ruins, countless aggrieved souls floated in the air, and the ground was covered in corpses. When it passed through divine realms, gods fell one after another, and blood stained the entire sky red. In the span of a few breaths, an entire divine realm turned into a dead zone, and all living things inside perished. Slaughter, death, darkness, fear. These things were playing out everywhere under the heavens. The Beast Emperor was like death itself. The places it walked were roads leading to hell. For the first time, Luo Yu witnessed this terror that surpassed a super devil. Just from what he saw, the number of super devils who died at the hands of the Beast Emperor already exceeded 5, and the pantheons they belonged to had completely vanished from history along with their deaths. At this moment, heaven suddenly erupted with dazzling light. A holy and massive figure descended. This was the God of Light. Its light shone across the entire human world, as if bringing a glimmer of hope to this world that was about to be swallowed by darkness. At the same time, from the various pantheons still remaining in the human world, over a dozen figures flew out. They were all super devils from various pantheons. Together with the God of Light, their target was that monster creating slaughter and death. The Beast Emperor. The God of Light and a dozen super devils. This scene was completely different from what Luo Yu understood. In the records left by the various pantheons, it was written that the God of Light alone exhausted all power to seal the Beast Emperor, thereby saving the human world. Later, the underworld and Grigori took advantage of the situation to incite the final decisive battle of the Great War, eventually leading to mutual destruction. From beginning to end, there was no mention of those dozen or so super devils. Could it be that because they all died, this part of the record was lost? Or perhaps, Michael, as the most loyal subordinate of the God of Light, deliberately hid these events to boast about his master's achievements? Luo Yu quickly overturned this thought. Because among those dozen or so super devils, he saw a familiar figure. That person was wrapped in death energy, extremely sinister. Luo Yu recognized that face. Although that face was so ugly that one wouldn't want to look at it a second time, he was still certain, that guy who kept releasing death energy to harass the Beast Emperor and create attack opportunities for that deity was none other than Hades, god of the underworld. Among the remaining dozen or so super devils, there were unfamiliar faces, as well as deities he was intimately familiar with. For instance, the 3 supreme gods of the Hindu pantheon were all present, not one missing. Seeing this, a thought popped into Luo Yu's mind. If Michael really wanted to steal the credit of these super devils after that deity fell, that would be nothing but a pipe dream. But the question now was, what exactly did Michael want to say by letting him see this ancient great battle? Luo Yu did not see any obvious clues. But the chill in his heart grew heavier and heavier. Once that thought emerged, it could no longer be suppressed. If that is really the case, it is too chilling. Luo Yu stared at the scene before him, watching this unprecedented great battle bit by bit, waiting for the final outcome. He did not know what he would see. But he knew that the answer must be very terrifying. Just then, the battle reached a white-hot intensity. The Beast Emperor's violent power smashed down overwhelmingly, and 4 super devils could no longer hold on and fell on the spot. Luo Yu felt his heart tighten as he watched. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The light was so blinding that one could not open their eyes. The earth was shaken out of its original position, great mountains turned into bottomless chasms, and the oceans were evaporated in just a few breaths, turning into scorched earth. The entire human world was shaking, as if it would shatter at any moment. The Beast Emperor roared frantically. Its dragon head and tiger head had already been severed by that deity. But this thing simply could not be killed. Not long after, new heads grew back, as if those wounds had never existed in the first place. The Beast Emperor's attack target was always that deity. The remaining 9 super devils fought desperately to harass it, creating opportunities for that deity to strike. They tried their best to intercept the Beast Emperor's attacks, using their own bodies to block those lethal moves. But their condition was extremely poor, their bodies were covered in wounds, with almost no patch of uninjured flesh. Just by watching, Luo Yu could feel the despair-inducing terror of the Beast Emperor. Just then, that deity suddenly shouted, "Eternal Kingdom." He clearly understood that if they continued to fight like this, even if they fought until the heavens overturned and the sun and moon lost their light, they would not be able to kill this monster that knew no fatigue, possessed endless power, and simply would not die. The only way was to seal it completely. Luo Yu widened his eyes. He saw a scene that he would never forget in his life. The eternal kingdom summoned by that deity spanned the entire sky of the human world, as if 2 worlds were directly superimposed on each other. It was a complete world, like the underworld, like heaven, and not the illusory projection that Luo Yu had once cast. It was materialized. The saints and angels on it were alive and had their own life essence. In that instant, that deity forcibly created a plane. It was like creating a heaven out of thin air. Luo Yu stood in place, completely stunned. Such a method was simply shocking to the extreme. It was chaos. Everything was in chaos. At this moment, that materialized eternal kingdom suddenly erupted with astonishing suction, and countless thick chains, as if coming to life, frantically entangled the Beast Emperor, wanting to seal it inside completely. But how would the Beast Emperor submit obediently? It struggled desperately, biting and attacking everything around it frantically. In this short instant, another 3 super devils fell on the spot. Chains broke one after another, and it looked like the Beast Emperor was about to break free from the restraints. At this time, a huge chasm suddenly split open on the ground, and terrifying magic power turned into a beam of light that shot into the sky, directly knocking the Beast Emperor into midair. Immediately after, a filthy power of light surged from the horizon and gave it a fierce push, blasting the Beast Emperor entirely into the Eternal Kingdom. Luo Yu saw this scene and understood. So in this world-destroying war, the people of the underworld and Grigori also played such a huge role. He could feel that those who acted from the underworld side were likely the first generation 4 great demon kings working together. On the side of Grigori, it was almost all the fallen angel cadres working together. After the Beast Emperor was blasted into the Eternal Kingdom, that kingdom began to operate frantically, mobilizing the power of an entire plane to press down firmly on the Beast Emperor, finally sealing it inside the 9th level of heaven. After doing all this, the Eternal Kingdom slowly disappeared into the void. No one knew where the Beast Emperor was sealed. This world-destroying war seemed to have ended just like that. But Luo Yu knew clearly that the key point Michael wanted him to see should have just begun. Sure enough, the remaining 6 super devils suddenly turned hostile. They aimed their attacks at that deity who had just saved the world and whose power was now almost exhausted. Hades was the first to strike, using death energy to disrupt all perception in this heaven and earth, making it impossible for outsiders to see clearly what was happening inside. However, that Luo Yu could see this memory scene showed that the opponent's shielding method was not thorough enough. That deity had just exhausted their power and never expected that these people would dare to sneak attack when they were at their weakest. Caught off guard, their body was directly pierced through by a pair of fists. That was the god of destruction of the Hindu pantheon, Shiva, who pinned them firmly to the sky. Immediately following that, Hades and the remaining 5 people struck together, fiercely blasting the extremely weakened deity, directly shattering their body. Even their divine soul was ground away bit by bit in the endless death energy. That deity fell just like that. Luo Yu's head completely exploded. All his thoughts were churned into a mess, impossible to sort out. The matter of sealing the Beast Emperor was not accomplished by the God of Light alone, this point he could still understand. After all, at that time the Beast Emperor was ravaging the human world, and the whole world was almost beaten to collapse. Which of those pantheons and divine realms that lived off the human world were not scared out of their wits? If they didn't stand up and join forces, they would all be finished. The pantheons that had been wiped out by the Beast Emperor before were the outcome, They turned into dead zones entirely. Even Ragnarok was not this miserable. This concerned their lifeline, who wouldn't risk their lives. But the problem was, the god of light had fallen. It was not the death that all those gods in the three realms knew about, not dying together with the first generation four great demon kings of the underworld in the Great War. Instead, he was ambushed and killed by the 6 super devils. That brings up a question. In the Great War, who was the one who led the angels from the 4th level of heaven into the underworld? And who was the one impersonating the god of light? Who exactly was it that ended up perishing together with the first generation 4 great demon kings in the end? There were plenty of survivors from the Great War. A matter like this simply couldn't be kept hidden. Luo Yu's mind raced, trying to straighten out the clues one by one. But the more he thought, the messier it got, and the more he tried to organize it, the more tangled it became. Until the images of the entire memory slowly faded and dissipated, his mind remained a complete jumble. All of this was completely different from the anime he had watched in his previous life. He vaguely felt that these waters were much deeper than he had imagined. The light before his eyes slowly brightened. Blinding white light flooded the entire temple. After a long while, Luo Yu finally came to his senses and found himself standing in the very center of the temple. The person on the high platform was the vice ruler of heaven, the true leader of heaven now, Michael. Did the god of light really die at the hands of Shiva and his group's ambush? Luo Yu already had a rough idea in his heart, but he couldn't help but ask. This secret was too explosive, he still couldn't believe it even now. Sit. Michael didn't answer, instead raising his hand in a gesture of invitation, leading Luo Yu to a seat on the right. After Luo Yu sat down, Michael finally spoke. Everything you just saw is true. The god had long since fallen, he died when sealing the Beast Emperor. A flash of irrepressible sorrow flickered in Michael's golden eyes. Luo Yu was silent for a long while. The deity in the Great War was actually Michael in disguise. This matter completely exceeded Luo Yu's expectations. The backup plan left behind in heaven by the fallen god was terrifyingly profound. Even after death, just by playing a single trump card, Michael was able to take away a large portion of the main forces of the underworld and Grigori. It was even more likely that before going to seal the Beast Emperor, the god had already foreseen his own fall. He had left this move to prevent heaven from completely collapsing. Luo Yu couldn't figure it out. During the Great War, did the first generation 4 great demon kings of the underworld, as well as Azazel who had once been an archangel, really not see that the god was actually Michael in disguise? Was there not a single flaw? Luo Yu simply didn't believe it. Perhaps they had seen through it, but no one had pointed it out. At that time, the Great War was already being fought fiercely, and there was simply no room for reconciliation. Only a thorough war could clear away the hatred between the 3 races, angels, fallen angels, and devils, all at once. Just as Michael had said and done. Thinking of this, Luo Yu's gaze towards Michael carried a bit more wariness. This universally recognized, good guy, of the 3 realms had likely deceived everyone. From the moment the god fell, whether it was the Great War or everything that followed, he had been the one manipulating things from behind the scenes. Giulio Gesualdo's involvement in the god's fall was likely not as simple as it appeared on the surface. In the end, it was probably for the sake of that god. You don't need to be on guard against me, I have no malice towards you. Michael saw the defensiveness in Luo Yu's eyes and spoke first. Luo Yu didn't hide anything. What I heard and saw today was too much of a shock, my entire perception has been turned upside down. At a time like this, if I had no guard up against you, that would be truly stupid. Michael nodded, not refuting him. Fair enough. If the god had been more vigilant against Shiva and those people back then, he might not have fallen. Luo Yu stared at Michael, his tone becoming serious. You called me here today, it's not just to let me know these secrets, right? Michael's gaze grew a bit more complex as he looked at Luo Yu. Of course not. I originally thought that after the god fell, the divine ability, eternal kingdom, was completely lost. I never expected that you would be able to obtain a prototype in the ancient battlefield. During the Great War, I remember very clearly that it was precisely because you used the eternal kingdom that you perished together with the first generation 4 great demon kings of the underworld. Luo Yu frowned, clearly disbelieving. Michael continued to explain. That divine art isn't that simple, it is the ancestor of all divine arts, the root of all divine arts. Moreover, just like sacred gears, only one person can inherit it per generation, the previous holder must die before the next can take over. The one I used back then was just a mark of the technique left within the god's power, it wasn't my own ability at all. He paused, then added, "You have seen that great war with your own eyes, so you should know that the eternal kingdom is not just a simple offensive divine art." Luo Yu didn't answer, his mind spinning, his gaze sweeping over Michael and then surveying the entire temple. After a long while, he finally spoke slowly, "I suspect the entire heaven is the eternal kingdom. In other words, you angels are all lifeforms derived from the eternal kingdom." Michael didn't deny it, just quietly watching him. Luo Yu recalled that battle from ancient times. When the god of light used the eternal kingdom to seal the beast emperor, he had vaguely grasped the truth. Those angels, those saints, were all living beings of flesh and blood. If that eternal kingdom from back then hadn't been used to seal the beast emperor, after millions of years of accumulation, absorbing countless light elements, it would likely have long since turned into the heaven of today. That was simply not an ordinary technique or divine art. That was the art of creation. Your eternal kingdom is just a prototype, incomplete, and will never reach the level where the god could create a world of his own. This has nothing to do with strength, Michael said. Luo Yu didn't make a sound, waiting for him to continue. The god left behind a partial legacy of the eternal kingdom in heaven, enough for you to perfect it to a higher level. What is the price? Luo Yu stared at him. He was indeed coveting the complete version of the eternal kingdom, but he wasn't stupid enough to think that pie would fall from the sky. Especially after witnessing the secrets Michael had hidden, he believed even less that he would give away benefits for free. It's not difficult for you, to be precise, for the future you, it's not an issue. Michael couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush anymore. I beg you, Red Dragon Emperor. Michael's voice was very low, carrying an almost humble plea. When a day comes in the future, if heaven no longer exists, please use the eternal kingdom to leave a place for the angel race to stay. Do not let them be completely uprooted within the three realms. Hearing these words come from a seraph was simply unbelievable. Luo Yu was completely stunned. The vice ruler of heaven, head of the four seraphs, Michael. He spoke to someone in this tone. What shocked Luo Yu even more was the content of his words. He suspected something was wrong with his ears. What did he mean by heaven disappearing? What kind of joke was this? One of the cornerstones of the three realms, just gone like that. The so-called three realms referred to the human world, heaven, and the underworld. Among these three, the human world was the most crucial. It was the hub connecting the underworld and heaven. Once the human world was gone, heaven and the underworld would collapse along with it. The various pantheons attached to them would all be finished. Ragnarok, the destruction of the pantheons, none of them would escape. But the problem was, heaven and the underworld were not dispensable things either. If either one disappeared, it would trigger earth-shattering changes. The remaining two realms wouldn't be able to live in peace either. Michael, what exactly do you want to do? The one speaking was not Luo Yu. It was Didrag, who had been silent all this time. This dragon, residing within the boosted gear, finally couldn't hold back anymore. Michael's earth-shattering words had completely shocked him awake. Previously, he and Luo Yu had witnessed one thing together. The god, who had just finished sealing the beast emperor and was extremely weak, was ambushed by Shiva and the other 6 super devils and directly fell. Didrag had only felt a little surprised at the time, but didn't think it was that big of a deal. Backstabbing was something that had happened plenty of times throughout history. It was just that the one being stabbed this time was the strongest god in the three realms. In Didrag's view, since the god had already died, whether he was killed by Shiva and his group or perished together with the first generation 4 great demon kings of the underworld, it had already happened, and there was nothing to pursue. But Michael's words were different. This was an apocalyptic level statement. He, Didrag, this former heavenly dragon, could not pretend to be deaf and dumb. Let heaven disappear. If this wasn't an apocalypse declaration, what was it? Didrag really couldn't understand how such words could come out of Michael's mouth. Didrag, it has indeed been a long time since we last met. In Michael's golden eyes, layer upon layer of memory surfaced. The last time we met was when you and the White Dragon Emperor caused a huge ruckus at the very beginning of the Great War. At that time, my god was still here. He paused. It's a pity, now. The longing in those eyes was thick and could not be dispelled. He was recalling that tragic the Great War from 1,000 years ago. More so, he was recalling the god when he was still here. The god had died. They, the angels who served by the god's side, seemed to have suddenly lost the meaning of their existence. More and more angels chose to fall. They seemed to have already sensed that the god had long since not been there. Diedrag's voice sounded. Michael, do you intend to start a god war? You want to avenge the god? To find the 6 super devils who ambushed the god back then and caused him to fall? Diedrag had already seen through Michael's intention. Michael did not deny it. Now, Hades, god of the underworld, has been killed by the Red Dragon Emperor. There are still 5 super devils left. Luo Yu stood to the side, silently watching Michael. Some things, thinking back now, he finally understood. Perhaps from the moment the god fell, Michael's faith had completely collapsed. He had been planning, he had been preparing, all for the sake of avenging the god. These angels, were all created by the god. To follow the fallen god was both an honor and a mission. However, the angel race could not just be cut off like this. That was why he ordered angels to unite with humans, using the power of rituals to breed half-angel hybrids like Dulio Gesualdo. It was to ensure the angel lineage continued. Diedrag's voice carried a hint of anger. Michael, you are crazy. This is not just a matter of 1 or 2 pantheons. Just the Hindu pantheon alone, even if you tied all the 3 factions together, might not be their match. Relying solely on heaven, on what basis? Michael said calmly. That is why I must use heaven as a sacrifice. Heaven gathers the most light attribute power in the 3 realms. Since heaven was created by the god, it should go with the god. He paused, turning to look at Luo Yu. Red Dragon Emperor, your appearance has given me a glimmer of hope. You may be able to allow the angel lineage to be preserved, and also minimize the impact on the human world and the underworld when heaven disappears. Having said that, Michael directly poured a vast influx of knowledge into Luo Yu's brain. That is the legacy left by the god in heaven, the eternal kingdom. Red Dragon Emperor, I hope you will grow quickly. After heaven vanishes, I hope you can create a substitute to prevent the sudden loss of heaven from affecting the human world and the underworld. As for the angel race, I leave them to your care. Luo Yu rubbed his temples and didn't answer. The mess Michael left him was, simply put, to use the eternal kingdom to recreate a fake heaven, keep the human world and the underworld from falling into chaos, and incidentally leave a way out for half-blood angels like Dulio Gesualdo. This job was really hard to take on. Judging by Michael's words, those pure-blooded angels created alongside the god would all have to leave with the god in the end. It wasn't something Michael could decide alone. He had likely already persuaded the 3 remaining seraphs in heaven, and even the majority of the high-ranking angels had agreed. Brother, the 3 realms are probably going to be a complete mess from now on. Diedrag's voice rang in his head, sounding very heavy. Not to mention what would happen after heaven was gone. Just considering those evil dragons and magical beasts sealed in heaven that couldn't be killed or destroyed, without suppression, they would all come pouring out. That situation would be no smaller than another evil dragon rebellion. I'm leaving first. Luo Yu rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Michael's attitude made it clear, no one could stop this. And he didn't have the standing to stop it anyway. When he walked out of the temple, Dulio Gesualdo was waiting outside. Lead the way, to the 7th layer, the mirror lake of light. Luo Yu didn't say anything more. Dulio Gesualdo nodded. With Dulio Gesualdo, a half-blood angel who was practically a saint, leading the way, the eternal kingdom let them pass all the way through. They didn't encounter any obstacles and arrived directly at the mirror lake of light on the 7th layer. The scene by the lake was exactly the same as in his memory. Groups of divine beasts and holy beasts were crouching by the lake drinking water, slowly breathing and refining energy. Dulio Gesualdo, are you getting involved in Michael's plan? Master wants me to become the second Michael and follow the underworld's example. I refused. 4 words, I refused, crisp and decisive. All right, I understand. After saying this, Luo Yu suddenly stretched his body, and in the blink of an eye, he transformed into a holy light dragon over 30 jong long. With a flap of his wings, he flew straight toward the center of the lake. Dulio Gesualdo stood there, watching that figure get smaller and smaller until it completely disappeared at the edge of his vision. He sighed and turned to leave. Some things don't need to be said explicitly, both of them understood. Luo Yu flapped his wings, heading toward the center of the lake. Ddrake's voice rang in his head again. Brother, if you get involved in this heaven business, it will be hard to pull yourself out later. Luo Yu sighed softly, his tone carrying a hint of helplessness. Honestly, I don't want to deal with the mess left by that fooled god at all, nor do I want to be some savior or saint. But I can't just watch that idiot go to his death. It's not a done deal yet. I reckon that even if heaven wants to fight a revenge war, it won't start so quickly. No one can say for sure about the future. After Luo Yu said this, an island suddenly appeared before him. The entire island was covered by dense forest and was at the very center of the mirror lake of light. The concentration of light elements in the surroundings was more than 1 or 2 times higher than at the lake shore. If it weren't for the fact that his cultivation path had changed, whether absorbing light elements or other attribute energies, his goal was only one: to sever those origin gold patterns. He would really be reluctant to leave this treasure trove for cultivation. This is the lair of the Holy Light Dragon. But why can't I feel much of the Holy Light Dragon's presence? Luo Yu landed on the island in the center of the lake, folded his wings behind him, transformed back into human form, and frowned slightly. When the dragons came to help last time, the Holy Light Dragon Patriarch, and Chi, had given him a drop of blood essence that could command the dragon race and specifically urged him to visit the center of the Mirror Lake of Light when he had time. Since he was already here, he might as well take a look. Red Dragon Emperor, it's only been a few months, and you've already reached the peak of the Mao class. A holy light dragon over 50 jong long slowly walked out of the dense forest. Luo Yu recognized the aura. It was the Holy Light Dragon Patriarch, and Chi. And Chi's huge dragon eyes were filled with shock. This guy's strength improvement was too exaggerated. Moreover, he vaguely felt that Luo Yu's bloodline had also become much stronger. Was it an illusion? The dragon bloodline is something that is extremely difficult to improve unless there is a huge opportunity. Congratulations, Patriarch and Chi, on severing all the shackles that bound the dragon race. Even if that dragon-eating Samael is resurrected in the future, there will be nothing to fear. Luo Yu cupped his hands in thanks. This is all thanks to you. Or rather, the entire dragon race of the 3 realms owes you a life. As Chi spoke, he also transformed from his holy light dragon form into the appearance of a middle-aged man. In his view, helping the Red Dragon Emperor with all his might once could not offset this immense favor. Red Dragon Emperor, I invited you to the Mirror Lake of Light because I want to help you complete the Holy Light Dragon's inheritance. Dragon inheritance. Luo Yu's eyes lit up. And Chi nodded and said, every Holy Light Dragon can obtain one opportunity for the Holy Light Dragon's inheritance on this island after reaching adulthood. Luo Yu had always been lacking regarding combat techniques and inheritance for dragon species. After transforming into a Holy Light Dragon, the moves he could show off, besides those he already knew, were too crude, either opening his mouth to breathe dragon breath or just pouncing for hand-to-hand combat. Thanks, Patriarch and Chi. Red Dragon Emperor, you are too polite. We are the ones who should be saying thank you. And Chi waved at Luo Yu and said, the inheritance altar is ahead, follow me, Red Dragon Emperor. After speaking, and Chi directly transformed into a holy light dragon and flew toward the depths of the island. Luo Yu was not slow either, following closely behind. Luo Yu and Chi flew for a while in the sky and landed on an open space in the very center of the island. A huge space gate stood here, as if it led to some unknown small plane. Behind the gate is the dragon graveyard of our Holy Light Dragon, which is also the place where the dragon species inheritance is opened. Luo Yu nodded, and the little doubt in his heart was resolved. No wonder he could barely feel the presence of other Holy Light Dragons on this island besides Chi. So this was the location of the dragon graveyard, and Chi was both the Patriarch and the Gravekeeper. Chi patiently explained to Luo Yu, our Holy Light Dragon inheritance is different from other dragon species. It's not about stuffing everything in at once, but rather coming selectively. The ancestor remnants sleeping in the dragon graveyard will give selectively based on the situation of the person receiving the inheritance. Some directly transmit abilities, others transmit combat experience and memories. What level of ancestor remnant can be awakened to pass on the inheritance depends on the strength and potential of the person receiving the inheritance. And she explained every detail of the dragon species inheritance to Luo Yu. This is the Holy Light Dragon's dragon graveyard. Luo Yu looked at the rolling, cloud-piercing mountains before him. The entire mountain range was built of white jade, exuding an astonishing holy aura, mixed with a faint scent of the dragon race. He knew clearly that these mountains were all formed by fallen holy light dragons. The more majestic and taller the mountain, the stronger the dragon buried there. Luo Yu counted roughly, and there were only 3 peaks here that were over 50 zhang high. In other words, there were only 3 Super Devil King class holy light dragons buried below. As for the Super Devil level holy light dragons nearly 100 zhang tall, there were none. Yet Luo Yu felt this was not a loss. What he had his eyes on were originally the 3 Super Devil King class Holy Light Dragon remnant inheritances. As for those trashy Mao class things, he didn't even look at them. Boom! The peak Mao class dragon aura on Luo Yu exploded, sweeping across the entire dragon graveyard like a tide. In the mountains formed by the bones of those holy light dragons, the remaining souls were awakened one after another. Orbs of inheritance light floated out from the mountains and hovered in midair. Still far from enough. Luo Yu narrowed his eyes and stared at the 3 mountains over 50 zhang high in front. Those 3 mountains remained motionless. He directly activated the balance breaker of the boosted gear. His body suddenly expanded to over 50 zhang, and his aura and strength instantly soared to the limit of the Super Devil King class. At this moment, 2 of the mountains finally reacted. 2 orange-red light orbs shot straight toward him. Luo Yu didn't dodge this time. He caught them and brought them directly into his mind. The information of the 2 inheritances instantly exploded in his consciousness. Holy Control. Dragon Combat Compendium. Luo Yu curled the corner of his mouth. These 2 things were exactly what he was missing. Holy Control is an auxiliary ability that allows Luo Yu to control holy power more precisely, making his fighting style varied and completely filling the gap of the Holy Light Dragon's monotonous attack methods. Just based on this one ability, his overall combat power could be directly increased by 20%. Because it was directly transmitted into his brain, Luo Yu could use it immediately. Swish, swish, swish. Light swords condensed around him, and then began to transform crazily, turning into blades, then spears, and then into the shapes of various beasts. This was just the most superficial usage. Going deeper, he could even freely control the dragon breath that had already been fired, making it turn corners as if it were alive. As for the Dragon Combat Compendium, just hearing the name, one knows it is for close quarters combat of the dragon race. This was also what Luo Yu was missing. The physical strength of the Holy Light Dragon was not inferior to the Black Dragon. The key is that this Dragon Combat Compendium not only has the moves of the Holy Light Dragon, but basically all the combat techniques of all dragon species in the 3 realms are included, even the evil dragons were not left out. Luo Yu really couldn't understand how a Super Devil King class Holy Light Dragon managed to get these things. After all, there are really quite a few Super Devils among the evil dragons. However, this trip today was worth it. Finally, the last small mountain over 50 zhang tall also began to vibrate, and an inheritance light orb floated out. Staring at the information appearing in his mind, Luo Yu couldn't help but gasp. Stasis Field. What this inheritance contained was a domain-type skill. As long as the enemy is covered by this domain, they will be directly fixed in place, completely becoming meat on the chopping block. The range of this domain is linked to the amount of holy power he outputs. Luo Yu calculated that in his full burst state, he could hold it for 10 minutes. Inside the domain, as long as it is not at the Super Devil level, one cannot move at all. Even if it is really a Super Devil, they would be hard controlled for several seconds. In battles of that level, a few seconds is enough to kill several times. With this move, Luo Yu knew clearly that from now on, he had another trump card to slaughter Super Devils. After the Eternal Kingdom, another killer move was in his hands. Seeing Luo Yu walk out, and she asked immediately, Red Dragon Emperor, how was the harvest? Luo Yu smiled. I got two inheritances, Holy Control and Dragon Combat Compendium, which are exactly what I was missing. He deliberately didn't mention the stasis field. In a few years, the three realms will become a complete mess. Holding onto a few hidden cards that no one knows about is the only way to ensure survival. Holy Control and the Dragon Combat Compendium. And Chi's face revealed a hint of envy. The Red Dragon Emperor is truly extraordinary. Back in the day, I only obtained the Dragon Combat Compendium. As for Holy Control, sigh. He looked full of regret and didn't continue. The human world. In a valley covered by lush greenery, a little girl with black hair was looking up at the sky, dazed. Her eyes seemed capable of piercing through space to see that narrow yet vast dimensional gap. After watching for a while, perhaps feeling bored, or perhaps having sensed something, the little girl turned her head and glanced to the right. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Ah, you've come. Luo Yu's figure materialized from the air. Ophis, I went to great lengths to sneak in just to avoid those people outside. Yet, you still saw through me at a glance. Because Yu is too weak. Hearing Ophis say this, Luo Yu couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. If anyone else had called him too weak, he would have definitely blasted them in the face with a full-power dragon breath. If he were to reveal all his hidden trump cards, he would easily rank in the top 10 in the world. And this level is still called too weak. Then there are hardly any strong people left in this world. But ever since he witnessed that battle between the God and the Beast Emperor, he finally understood, in front of those monsters, his own strength was simply not worth mentioning. Not to mention the infinite dragon god Ophis before him, an existence that even the God and the Beast Emperor would have to look up to. Calling himself too weak, that was probably gilding the lily. However, Yu, the aura on you has changed quite a bit. Ophis tilted her head, a hint of confusion appearing in her eyes. She knew about Luo Yu reincarnating as a dragon, but this dragon aura gave her a slightly different feeling. I told you before, there is an invisible shackle on the dragon race, Luo Yu explained. That's why that so-called dragon eater, Samael and the dragon slaying weapons were able to take advantage of it. I have now severed that shackle. Ophis just responded indifferently. She didn't seem surprised at all that Luo Yu could sever the dragon shackles. Luo Yu was long used to this girl always had this cold, deadpan attitude about everything. Ophis, come with me. Luo Yu reached out his hand to her. Don't you get bored staring at the dimensional gap every single day? He had previously promised the underworld that he would help hold Ophis back, leaving time for the underworld to act. Since he promised, he had to keep his word. Besides, the dragon eater, Samael had already been taken out, and Ophis was no longer a threat in this world. Rather than letting her continue to stay here and be used as a pawn by the old Satan faction, it was better to take her away. Go with Yu. Ophis tilted her head, her expression looking somewhat cute, and stared at Luo Yu as she asked, Yu, are you trying to abduct me? Cough. Cough cough. Luo Yu was choked by these words. Who would have thought? This Ophis, who cared about nothing except the dimensional gap and was as simple as a blank sheet of paper, could actually say something so jaw-dropping. Ophis, who taught you that? Luo Yu refused to believe it. If no one was messing around behind the scenes, how could such words come out given Ophis's personality? Dulio Gesualdo told me, Ophis answered honestly. He said you would eventually abduct me. That guy. Luo Yu's mouth twitched. Just let him die. If he gets crushed into dust by some random god in the upcoming chaos of the three realms, don't come looking for him. Feeding Ophis such poisonous chicken soup to slander him for no reason. Fine, let's just say I'm going to abduct you. Luo Yu held Ophis's hand and smiled. So, my cute infinite dragon god, are you interested in moving to a new place and changing your mood? Ophis did not refuse. Although she was simple, she wasn't stupid. She knew very clearly who was genuinely good to her and who was just using her between the four great emperors and the old Satan faction. She just couldn't be bothered to care. Even if she was being used, it was just giving away a trivial amount of snakes, which didn't mean anything to her at all. The only thing she wanted to do was accumulate power, take back the dimensional gap from the Great Red, and then enjoy the eternal peace there. Judging by strength, the old Satan faction was no match for Luo Yu. In Ophis's eyes, Luo Yu was more likely to help her take back the dimensional gap. Choosing between Luo Yu or the old Satan faction required no hesitation on her part. Ophis, please leave a clone here, Luo Yu instructed. Don't let those guys outside know you've left. Within the old Satan faction, the strongest was Rizvam, the super devil. The remaining descendants of the first generation four great demon kings were just a bunch of small fry. They hadn't even reached the super devil king class, yet they dreamed all day of fighting back to the underworld and reclaiming the throne. But the problem was, these guys were like rats in the sewer, unable to see the light of day, and there were quite a lot of them. They had people everywhere in the three factions. To clean them out completely, one couldn't alert the enemy just yet. Let the underworld slowly make its deployments. In any case, the old Satan faction believed that as long as Ophis was there, they were absolutely safe. No one dared to attack this place. Just let this group of sewer rats hold onto their foolish thoughts and wait for death. Ophis didn't know what Luo Yu wanted to do. But she obediently split off a clone, identical to her true body, and left it where it was. Luo Yu glanced at the clone and was secretly shocked. Even though it was just a clone, the power it contained far exceeded that of an ordinary super devil. It was simply terrifying to the extreme. Let's go. After Luo Yu finished speaking, he was about to take Ophis's little hand and leave. Suddenly, he sensed a very familiar aura not far to the north. Loki, I didn't expect you to have joined the Chaos Brigade as well. This saves me the trouble of looking for you everywhere. Having said that, he immediately took Ophis and dashed in the direction of Loki. Luo Yu was a person who held grudges. Loki, Rizvam, and Zeus, these three people had taken advantage of his situation and launched a sneak attack when he was severing the dragon shackles. He wasn't a magnanimous person. He would deal with Loki first. Rizvam would be left to the underworld and valley to handle. As for Zeus, Michael would sooner or later go to settle the score with him. After all, the guy who ambushed Hades, god of the underworld, leading to his fall, was likely acting under Zeus's orders. Loki gritted his teeth, the magical light in his hands exploding wildly. Those pursuers from the Norse pantheon fell at his feet one after another. If I were still the Red Dragon Emperor from back then, how could I be forced to join forces with this group of madmen? And Odin. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got, and he cast a few more arcane magic spells, blasting the last few Valkyries into dust. That old thing Odin, is he underestimating me too much? Thinking he can catch me and drag me back by sending a few Valkyries? Dream on. Ever since he besieged the Red Dragon Emperor together with Rizvam and Zeus, the Norse pantheon had listed him as a wanted criminal. Odin personally ordered his arrest. If he were really caught and dragged back, Loki knew very well that what awaited him was the prison underneath Odin's palace, where he would never see the light of day. Of course, he wouldn't just surrender. In the entire Norse pantheon, aside from Thor personally taking action, he didn't care about anyone else at all. Even if Odin came personally, it would only cause Ragnarok to arrive early. After killing several waves of pursuers, Rizvam approached him and invited him to join the Chaos Brigade. To be honest, Loki despised those trash from the old Satan faction in the Chaos Brigade. But when he saw the infinite dragon god Ophis and obtained that snake, he didn't care anymore. As long as Ophis was there, he could easily lead the Norse pantheon toward its original destiny, Ragnarok. Odin, just you wait. And the four great emperors, HMPH. Loki had originally thought those four guys were just brats with some strength. Who knew they could grow to the point of suppressing the three realms? While the four great emperors are not in the Chaos Brigade, I must quickly unite with Rizvam and those people from the old Satan faction to kick them out completely. In Loki's view, as long as they found a way to drive the four great emperors away, they could indirectly control Ophis. By then, whether he wanted to cause Ragnarok or anything else, with Ophis's invincible power in hand, there would be nothing to fear. Yo, Loki, I didn't expect you to have run to the Chaos Brigade too. A familiar voice suddenly rang in Loki's ear. Loki's expression changed abruptly. Red Dragon Emperor. He turned his head sharply, gnashing his teeth as he looked at Luo Yu, who had appeared behind him at some unknown time. Without a word, he immediately summoned Fenrir. Loki knew very well that with his strength, he had absolutely no chance of winning against the Red Dragon Emperor. Even with the snake given by Ophis, it was the same. Fenrir stepped out from the void, an overwhelming divine might sweeping over his body. His gaze was vicious, locking onto Luo Yu, as if he would pounce and bite through his throat at any moment. Stupid dog, I don't have time to play with you right now. If we make a commotion and attract that group of Rizvim's people, it will be troublesome. Luo Yu glanced at Fenrir nonchalantly and turned back to say to the empty space behind him, "This idiot is yours, don't let it bite you." "There's someone else." Loki's face changed drastically, that sense of unease surging wildly. Just the Red Dragon Emperor was already troublesome enough. Someone who could block Fenrir had to be at least a super devil level expert. Loki was already considering retreating. But when he saw the figure walking slowly from behind the Red Dragon Emperor, his whole heart went cold. That petite figure, wasn't it the infinite dragon god Ophis whom he had seen just a few days ago? The nominal leader of their Chaos Brigade. "Lady Ophis, why are you here?" Loki still held onto a glimmer of hope, wishing that Ophis just happened to be out for some air and had nothing to do with the Red Dragon Emperor. Ophis didn't speak, using her actions to shatter the last bit of Loki's fantasy. "Awoo!" Like a child fighting, Ophis lightly slapped Fenrir on the head. Fenrir seemed to have been hit hard by some force. Howling, he clutched his dog head with his front paws and collapsed directly to the ground. Seeing this scene, Luo Yu shook his head helplessly. There were hardly anyone in the entire three realms who could withstand this child slap from Ophis. Perhaps Shiva could take one or two. After all, that guy's strength was second only to Ophis, and he had even punched through the god of destruction in ancient times. He should be somewhat capable. So noisy. Ophis, finding Fenrir's howling too piercing, glared at it, and a sliver of her terrifying aura leaked out, scaring Fenrir into immediately shutting up, not daring to even move. Good. Ophis imitated how Luo Yu used to tease dogs and patted Fenrir on the head. Fenrir quickly leaned its head in, desperately trying to please her. It looked nothing like Fenrir, the spitting image of an obedient pet dog. "Run." Loki felt a chill down his spine. Not daring to stay a second longer, he turned and bolted into the distance. His greatest trump card, Fenrir, had been easily handled by Ophis. Facing the Red Dragon Emperor, he would undoubtedly die. Furthermore, the snake within him had vanished the instant Ophis appeared. "Quite decisive, aren't you?" Luo Yu watched the fleeing Loki, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Unfortunately, you should have run the moment you saw me." Luo Yu immediately activated Balance Breaker. The boosted gear erupted in its humanoid state, covering his entire body in crimson armor as dragon wings burst from his back. His power surged in one breath to the peak of the Super Devil King class. The reason was simple: the boosted gear had upgraded from the elite grade to the high grade. Even in this humanoid balance breaker state, he was vaguely touching the threshold of the peak Super Devil King class. Compared to Loki, Luo Yu was clearly a cut above. Stasis field. A transparent, invisible field instantly expanded, enveloping Loki, who had only managed to flee a few steps. Loki's body froze abruptly in midair. The surrounding wind, leaves, and airflow all came to a halt. The world seemed to have been pressed on a pause button. All things fell silent, as if the entire space had been forcibly cut out of the world. A flash of surprise crossed Ophis's eyes. She and Fenrir were also within the range of the field, but Luo Yu's stasis field, at the peak Super Devil King class level, could at most trap Loki for a few seconds. A Fenrir of this level was completely unaffected. Not to mention Ophis. However, these few seconds were enough for Luo Yu to finish off Loki. A blurred shadow flashed by. Luo Yu appeared instantly before Loki. Looking at this infamous evil god from Norse mythology, who was now like a fish on a chopping block, his eyes filled with terror, Luo Yu remained expressionless. "It's over, Loki, don't meddle in other people's business in your next life." Crimson Dragon Holy Sword pierced directly through Loki's body. The splattered blood remained suspended in midair, unable to fall. Crimson Emperor flame surged into the wound, beginning to incinerate him from the inside out. A few seconds. Before Loki could break free from the field, he was burned to ashes in despair. Fenrir. Luo Yu turned his head to look. The gray, puppy-like Fenrir was being held in Ophis's arms like a pet. It seemed this Fenrir, who caused Ragnarok in Norse mythology, had truly been subdued by Ophis. He had been worrying about how to deal with Fenrir, but since it had become Ophus's pet, that was fine too. Let's go. After saying this, Luo Yu took Ophus's hand, and the two vanished instantly. By the time Luo Yu returned to Kuo town, more than 10 days had passed. He hadn't spent long in the heaven, as most of his time was spent searching for Ophus and on the journey back. In terms of marking spatial coordinates and opening portals, Luo Yu was far less skilled than the expert Dulio Gesualdo. That guy could freely open portals between the three realms, but he couldn't. Luo Yu could only travel on foot, taking the opportunity to let Ophus see the liveliness and scenery of the human world, so she wouldn't keep dwelling on the eternal silence of the dimensional gap. He really couldn't understand what was so good about a hellhole like the dimensional gap. Wasn't it just a lifeless, silent space? Was a place like that really worth Ophus chasing after it so devotedly? Luo Yu couldn't figure it out, nor could he understand what kind of logic the infinite dragon god Ophus and the great red of this world, the two beings standing at the very top, actually had. Inside the villa, in the living room, a group of women stared curiously at the little girl following closely beside Luo Yu. Hadn't Luo Yu gone to the heaven with the Thunder Emperor? How did he end up bringing back a little girl? The little girl wore an exquisite black and white Gothic dress, a small black top hat perched on her head, and a pair of little red leather shoes on her feet. A faint, cold aura emanated from her. She looked just like a porcelain doll that had walked out of a painting. She was holding a gray puppy in her arms, which seemed to be afraid, baring its teeth and acting fiercely toward the people around. But as soon as the little girl touched it lightly, it immediately became docile, obedient as a cat. Sona felt that this child Luo Yu brought back was somewhat similar to the cat-like subordinate under Rias Grimori. Both carried a cold aura, but upon closer inspection, it was completely different. The cat-like subordinate had been bullied severely when she was young, which was why she had sealed away her emotions. But this child was like a blank sheet of paper, naturally lacking such things. This puppy is just too cute. Tsubaki Shinra had loved cats and dogs since she was a child, and seeing such a fluffy puppy, she couldn't resist. Little sister, what's its name? She couldn't help but reach out to touch the puppy's head. Fenrir was furious. How dare a mere lowly devil touch it, the Fenrir, with those dirty hands? But nestled in Ophus's arms, other than baring its teeth and acting fierce, it didn't have the slightest courage to move, terrified that Ophus might swat it and cripple it with a single blow. That would be a more pathetic death than its former master, Loki. Luo Yu glanced at his apprentice who was courting death, and muttered to himself, "Is it appropriate for you to call Ophus, little sister?" When Ophus was born, humans hadn't even been created by those gods yet. In the entire three realms, Tsubaki Shinra was the only one who dared to call the infinite dragon god Ophus, little sister. Fenrir, Ophus said indifferently. Fenrir. Sona and the others frowned. It felt like they had heard this name somewhere, but for a moment, they couldn't quite recall it. How strange. Luo Yu had the words on the tip of his tongue but got stuck. He had definitely heard that name recently, he just couldn't recall it for the moment. He frowned and quickly ran through his thoughts. Rhea Kusaka suddenly brightened and said, "Fenrir, the Fenrir." As soon as she finished speaking, Sona and the others were stunned, then each of them wore a look of realization. Fenrir. Sona chewed on the name. They were certainly no strangers to the name of the demonic wolf in the Norse pantheon that was said to be able to bite gods to death. Wasn't Loki just bringing that monster along to launch a sneak attack while Luo Yu was severing the dragon species seal? However, was it appropriate to use the name of that famous demonic beast for a little puppy? Suddenly, Seraphal slapped her thigh, her voice rising sharply. Fenrir. She stared fixedly at the puppy in Ophus's arms, her face full of shock. Sister, it's just a name, is there any need to be so surprised? Sona felt her sister was overreacting. It was just a shared name, it had nothing to do with that fierce beast. No, it's not about the name. Seraphal shook her head repeatedly, her fingers trembling as she pointed at the fluffy little thing, her voice urgent and shrill. It is the Fenrir itself. Sister, it's just. Sona's words trailed off, her pupils suddenly constricted, and she froze. Her sister had said, itself, not, same name. The rest of the people also reacted. Tsubaki Shinra was so scared that she took 2 large steps back, her face turning pale, as if what Ophis was holding wasn't a puppy, but a monster that could tear her apart at any moment. Hey, Red Dragon Emperor, is this thing really Fenrir? Wasn't it in Loki's hands? How did it end up here? Seraphald's tone was aggressive. The puppy had bared its teeth at her just now, and the fangs it revealed made her hair stand on end, as if she had been targeted by some natural predator. Luo Yu pulled Ophis to sit on the sofa and said casually, "It's nothing, I ran into Loki a few days ago and happened to kill him." As for Fenrir, Ophis thought it was fun, so she took it as a pet. Sona and the group were all stunned upon hearing this. Tsubaki Shinra wanted to cry but had no tears, feeling a chill in her heart, terrified that the little thing might suddenly transform back to its original form and swallow her in one gulp. Seraphal glanced at Luo Yu and clicked her tongue. Running into you, Loki really had terrible luck. The evil god of the north was chopped down by that kid with a single blade. Recently, he had been killing gods a bit too smoothly, even catching the Fenrir back. Now the Norse pantheon, just like the Greek one, was left with only one super devil. However, wait, Seraphal held her teacup, suddenly feeling that something was wrong. That guy, the Red Dragon Emperor, did he just say the 3 words, Ophis? She must have misheard. How could an existence of that level come to a place like this? She took a sip of tea, thinking that this small, crappy town, counting Fenrir, actually had 2 super devil level combatants. You know, many mainstream pantheons only had 1 or 2 super devils to hold up their reputation, those like the Hindu pantheon were, after all, in the minority. Lady Ophis, why are you here? A scream erupted from upstairs. Kuroka had just woken up, her eyes still blurry. She rubbed them hard until her eye sockets turned red before confirming she hadn't seen wrong. Cough, 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 it really is Ophis. Seraphal choked on her tea, her eyes widening as she stared at the little girl sitting on the sofa. The infinite dragon god Ophis, actually hanging out with the Red Dragon Emperor. This was too terrifying. The hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Butler Izumi was also dumbfounded, staring motionless at Ophis. He had seen all kinds of storms and waves in his life, but he never imagined that an existence of this level would appear here. Back during the Great War, which almost shattered the 3 realms, the infinite dragon god hadn't even shown her face. Their son-in-law, however, had simply brought this big shot home. Turning the river and overturning the sea wasn't enough to describe his mood right now. President, who is Ophis? Tsubaki Shinra whispered, her eyes darting toward the strange atmosphere on the sofa. They had all sensibly stood up and moved aside just now. Lord Seraphal of the underworld was standing before the little girl named Ophis with a face full of awe. Kuroka beside her had the same reaction. How could they dare to sit casually on the sofa? You know, in the villa, Kuroka had never been this respectful even when talking about certain powerhouses. But Master was still sitting there as if nothing had happened. Could this little girl Master brought back be some incredible big shot? A god king's youngest daughter? Or the granddaughter of a main deity who rules a divine realm? These were the most powerful identities Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka could think of. I should have realized it sooner. Sona had a bitter smile on the corner of her mouth. Fenrir, the Fenrir, is a super devil level existence, one of the top 10 powerhouses in the world. She continued, how could a guy of that level be willing to lie in a little girl's arms and act spoiled? Even if you pat its head, it would at most bare its teeth, but it wouldn't even dare to move. Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka exchanged a glance. Having spent these days together, they also had a rough understanding of their master's strength. A super devil level combat capability, capable of directly finishing off Hades, god of the underworld. With this kind of strength, he could definitely rank in the world's top 10. But the problem now is making Fenrir, who is on the same level as their master, act as obediently as a dog. This really doesn't make much sense. It's not that they look down on their master. It's just that this is their most honest thought. Tsubaki Shinra, you might not have heard of these 3 characters, Ophis. Sona's expression became serious. She glanced at the little girl sitting nearby. But this name, you must be familiar with. Infinite Dragon God. Tsubaki Shinra's pupils shrank violently. Her heart skipped a beat. She stared intently at the petite figure sitting beside her master. Within the 3 realms, whether it be god kings, main gods, devil kings, or dragon kings. Anyone who hears this name will feel awe, because it represents the strongest in the three realms. None other. Dragon god. Raya Kusaka looked confused. Is it a dragon species like our master? There are indeed dragon species, dragon kings, and heavenly dragons in the three realms. Sona explained with a heavy tone. But there are only two who can be called dragon gods. Infinite dragon god Ophis, and the Great Red, Great Red. Ophis was born in the dimensional gap and has descended into this world since ancient times. Even that thing has to fear her a little. She has always firmly occupied the position of the world's strongest. You might think that the gap between the first and the 10th isn't that big. Sona paused. After all, they are all existences of the same level, right? Tsubaki Shinra and Raya Kusaka nodded. That was indeed what they thought. But my sister once said. Sona's tone became even heavier. Ophis's strength is completely above the other top 10 powerhouses. Even if you gathered all the world's top 10 powerhouses to surround and attack her, I'm afraid you wouldn't even be able to hurt a single hair on her. Between the two, they are existences on completely different levels. She is a monster above the super devil level. She is the embodiment of the strongest power in the three realms. Gulp. Tsubaki Shinra swallowed hard. She and Raya Kusaka couldn't imagine it at all. The little girl their master brought back was actually an existence of this level. Sigh. Sona sighed. I'm afraid that as long as Ophis makes even the slightest move, the entire Kuo town, and even the Far East, would suffer disasters akin to tectonic shifts. She had never even considered the possibility of Luo Yu bringing the infinite dragon god Ophis back to the villa. It was completely beyond her expectations. Lord Ophis, why are you here? Seraphal asked cautiously. Ophis was teasing Fenrir in her arms using the method Luo Yu taught her, and replied casually, Yu said he wanted to change places to relax, so he brought me here. Brought you here? Seraphal and Kuroka were both stunned, turning their heads to look at Luo Yu, who was sitting beside Ophis and occasionally reaching out to help her tuck her hair. This guy is too bold. He even dared to abduct Ophis so casually, and was even touching her there. Seraphal was really afraid that Ophis would strike in a fit of rage. She wasn't worried about that kid Luo Yu's safety, but if Ophis really went berserk, no one present would survive. Isn't your underworld planning to take this opportunity to finish off the old Satan faction and rise them together? Ajuka Beelzebub asked me to hold Ophis back. Luo Yu shrugged, the meaning of his words very clear. Seraphal's expression stiffened. The underworld was indeed planning this, wanting to root out the old Satan faction and that group of tumors around Rizvam once and for all, bringing a complete end to it. As one of the four great Satans, she naturally knew about this plan. The original arrangement was to have Luo Yu hold Ophis back when the war started, just so she wouldn't interfere. Who knew that this Red Dragon Emperor would directly abduct Ophis herself, and she would even be quite obedient to him? It's really hard to understand. However, if the old Satan faction and Rizvam discover that Lord Ophis is missing, wouldn't that alert the enemy? When Seraphal said this, she secretly glanced at Ophis, and only dared to finish her sentence after seeing she still had that indifferent expression. After all, Ophis was nominally still on the side of the old Satan faction and Rizvam, discussing how to wipe out her people in front of her just felt a bit wrong. Don't worry, I left a clone over there, they won't discover it. Luo Yu explained casually. Leave the rest to your underworld, don't let me down. I know, you don't need to remind me. Seraphal glared at him. The underworld is still secretly cleaning up those from the old Satan faction, or their supporters, inside. It will still take quite some time to get it cleaned up. What they didn't expect was that Luo Yu would solve Ophis, the biggest trouble, so quickly. The underworld side also needs to step up its efforts. Sona and the others, Luo Yu, and Tsubaki Shinra, all welcomed the final vacation of their first year. When the vacation ends, they will be second-year seniors when school starts. Although the number of times Luo Yu went to school could be counted on one hand, and he would skip classes for an entire month, disappearing completely. However, this school was originally managed by devils. He is the son-in-law of the Citri clan, who would dare to make him repeat a year? That would never happen. Luo Yu's strength, just like the number of times he skipped class, had completely stalled. not moving at all, still at the peak of Mao class, without the slightest progress. However, not improving in realm doesn't mean there was no progress in combat power. During this time, he had been running back and forth between Kuo Town and the ancient battlefield in the underworld. He wasn't going to devour the residual divine power there. Like Saraorg Baal, he was using the special environment of the ancient battlefield, as well as the remnants of the Great War buried there, to hone the three great inheritances he obtained from the heavenly realm. Holy Control, Dragon Combat Compendium, Stasis Field. Holy Control and Stasis Field were easy enough to talk about. These two inheritances carried a large amount of application experience and techniques. All Luo Yu had to do was to improve his proficiency step by step, and he would slowly be able to master them completely. Now, he had already mastered these two abilities quite well. Relying on this alone, his combat power had increased by a solid 50%. This amount of increase was already quite terrifying. However, if he wanted to go further, relying solely on the experience of predecessors or resting on his laurels simply wouldn't work. He had to rely on his own careful thought and research. Just like the dragon reincarnation he created based on the devil reincarnation technology back then. To be honest, Luo Yu didn't spend much time practicing the two abilities of Holy Control and Stasis Field. The real trouble was the main part. Dragon Combat Compendium. This thing had to be honed bit by bit, there were no shortcuts. Only through arduous training, or even on the edge of life and death, could it be completely integrated into his instincts. Achieving it in battle, where any part of the dragon body, every move, every style, could become a lethal blow that pierces through the enemy. If it could be said that Holy Control and Stasis Field could already be used almost completely, then the Dragon Combat Compendium couldn't even be considered introductory. The dragon combat techniques inside were as numerous as the stars in the sky, they were simply uncountable. Those devils, angels, and fallen angels in the underworld's ancient battlefield fought like marionettes. They simply couldn't meet the requirements of the Dragon Combat Compendium for combat improvement. If Luo Yu wanted to fully grasp this skill, he would have to experience at least dozens of great battles and fight until he lost himself. But now, the surface of the three realms was calm. All the major pantheons were quite restrained, and no one wanted to make the first move. Even if Indra had that heroes arise in troubled times mentality in his heart, he only dared to engage in petty tricks behind the scenes and didn't dare to openly provoke a divine war. Whoever stirred up trouble first would be a fool. Wasn't the fate of the three factions the best example? Luo Yu had just returned from the underworld, and his gains were pitifully small. He looked up at the blue sky above, his gaze seemingly able to pierce through the clouds to see the holy and solemn scene of the heavenly realm. Perhaps Michael's angel revenge plan could completely throw the three realms into chaos. Luo Yu muttered to himself. When that time comes, I'll strike amidst the chaos, and maybe I'll be able to fully grasp the Dragon Combat Compendium. Partner, you might as well pick one type of dragon combat technique that suits you first. D-Drag advised from the side. The Holy Light Dragon set is not bad, there's no need to force all millions of dragon combat techniques into your own body, it's too difficult. Luo Yu shook his head. If I hadn't obtained the compendium, that would be one thing, but since I have it in my hands, it would be too much of a pity to give it up. In his eyes, the value of the Dragon Combat Compendium was on par with the Stasis Field. The Stasis Field involved the heaven-defying attribute of time and could be used as a trump card. But the Dragon Combat Compendium was not inferior at all. If he could really gather millions of dragon combat techniques into one body, just as mentioned before. His dragon claws, dragon tail, dragon head, every part of his body could become a lethal weapon that takes lives. Every move, every style, would make it impossible for enemies to defend against. Once the Dragon Combat Compendium was truly mastered, his combat power would be permanently increased. It's funny to think about. Luo Yu smiled bitterly. Back when I was in the heavenly realm, I was hoping Michael and the others would act later, to leave me more time to master the eternal kingdom. Now, I'm actually looking forward to them acting sooner. Speaking of the eternal kingdom, Luo Yu had indeed obtained the portion of the inheritance left by the war god in the heavenly realm, and his progress was not slow. But to be able to create a heavenly realm out of thin air like the war god, it was simply impossible. Let alone a heavenly realm, he couldn't even create a prototype. He knew that he couldn't think about reaching the level of the war god's eternal kingdom anytime soon. Without decades, or even hundreds of years of effort, he shouldn't even think about it. Michael also knew this in his heart. The top-tier divine art of the angel god, the eternal kingdom, was not so easily mastered. So what he asked for at the time was just for Luo Yu to be able to use it one day in the future to leave a place for the angel race to settle. He didn't set a deadline, nor did he urge progress. For Michael, this was grasping that faint hope among all possibilities to leave a path for the angel lineage in the future. Forget it, why think about these useless things? Tomorrow I should go to the underworld with Sona to visit the Citri clan. It's my first time visiting as a son-in-law, so I have to look the part. Sona had plans for this vacation. She intended to take her servants, including Tsubaki Shinra, to the underworld for training. As devils, they should also get familiar with the underworld. After all, that is the base camp of the devils. The cleanup in the underworld is almost done. Let's completely settle the old Satan faction on this trip. Luo Yu's eyes darkened. After dragging it out for so long, it was time to put an end to it. The spatial tunnel was vast and colorful. Violent spatial energy clung to the walls of the tunnel, constantly pounding against the reinforced barriers in an attempt to maintain the stability of the entire passage. A long, roaring sound of a train echoed through the tunnel. A luxury train, with the Citri clan crest cast onto its outer shell, was hurtling at high speed through this spatial tunnel. The entire outer shell of the train was forged from a special metal refined through alchemy, which could effectively defend against the erosion of spatial energy that occasionally leaked into the tunnel. After all, creating such a wide spatial tunnel and trying to completely contain the violent forces was simply unrealistic. The interior of the train carriage was luxuriously decorated. Sona, Luo Yu, Ophis, and the others were all present. Kaneko and Kuroka did not come. As for Kuroka, it seemed Valley had something to discuss with her. As for Kaneko, she was, after all, a servant of Rias Grimoire. Even if she returned to the underworld, she would go to the Grimoire clan. She couldn't possibly run off to the Citri clan. Serafal was also not present. She had returned to the underworld a few days earlier to deploy some matters, which were likely related to the final purge of the old Satan faction. Ophis, what's wrong? The gentle Rhea Kusaka looked at Ophis, who had been staring blankly out the window. Ever since they entered the spatial tunnel, Ophis had maintained this posture and hadn't moved for a long time. After spending time together these past few days, the sense of awe that Sona and the others felt toward Ophis had faded quite a bit. Everyone discovered that Ophis herself was actually very simple and knew almost nothing about many things in the outside world. She was like a child as clean as a blank sheet of paper, making one unable to help but feel affection for her. That was exactly how Rhea Kusaka felt. These days, she had completely become Ophis's personal nanny. Ophis jumped down from his arms and walked to the window, her tone carrying a hint of nostalgia. This is the dimensional gap, my former home, it was always so quiet. Rhea Kusaka tilted her head, not quite understanding. Luo Yu walked over and stood beside the two of them to explain. The place we are staying in now is a spatial rift, sandwiched between the human world and the underworld. Passing through here, we will reach the place where Ophis was born, the dimensional gap. A big guy drove her out of there. The Great Red, right. Rhea Kusaka was no stranger to these matters. She hadn't just been Ophis's nanny for a day or two, she had long since read the files. That guy was always flying in the dimensional gap, governing dreams. He was a dragon god so terrifying he was indescribable. In the three realms, Ophis is considered invincible. Luo Yu's tone was flat. But the Great Red, is even stronger than her, strong to a degree that is simply unimaginable. That guy Valley has spent his whole life chasing Great Red, treating him as his ultimate goal. Ah, you. Ophis raised her head, staring at him, her tone not one of negotiation but of certainty. You will help me defeat Great Red. It was as if she had already determined that Luo Yu would sooner or later settle this score for her. Luo Yu reached out and ruffled her little head. If one day my strength is sufficient, I wouldn't mind helping you settle the score. He didn't say he would help her take back the dimensional gap, nor did he mention anything about eternal silence. In his eyes, that place was about the same as a cage, it was useless. Ophis probably understood the meaning behind his words. She didn't say anything else, just nodded and continued to stare at the spatial tunnel outside the window. The train traveled for half an hour before finally emerging from the spatial tunnel. Looking down from high altitude, one couldn't see the edge at all. It was entirely the territory of the Citri clan. Tsubaki Shinra leaned against the window, her mouth wide open. President, just how big is your family's estate? Sona smiled. About the same size as the Far East. The Far East. Tsubaki Shinra was completely dumbfounded. Even Rei Kusaka was stunned for a moment. For a single family's territory to rival that of a country was simply too exaggerated. In the three realms, the human world is the smallest, but it is also the most important. Luo Yu said casually. If we're talking about land area, the 9 layers of the heavens combined don't even compare to the underworld. Tsubaki Shinra only felt slightly better after hearing this. So that's how it is. But master, why do those pantheons insist on hanging their divine realms next to the human world? The human world is so small. Tsubaki Shinra and Sona also pricked up their ears. Evidently, they hadn't figured this out either. Luo Yu checked the time. There was still a while before they got off, so he simply started explaining to them. Those gods initially considered building their divine realms in the underworld, or simply splitting the underworld to take a piece. But whose territory is the underworld? The devils are in charge. At that time, the strength of the devils was far greater than it is now, and the gods didn't dare to provoke them. As for the heavens, Luo Yu smiled and continued. The heavens have the strongest god presiding over them. Who would dare to go there and look for trouble? Then what happened in the end? Someone asked. So the human world became the gods' final choice. Moreover, the human world is much safer than the underworld and the heavens, so many gods are willing to build their divine realms here. Safe. Yes. Remember one thing. Even if the heavens were gone, the human world would at most suffer some impact and wouldn't be destroyed. But if the human world were gone, then the heavens and the underworld wouldn't be able to hold on. Tsubaki Shinra nodded, indicating she had noted it. Welcome, Your Highness Ophis, to our humble abode. The current head of the Citri clan, Oliver, stood at the main gate personally to welcome them. Ophis just nodded, as a response. Xiao Yu, you don't mind if your uncle calls you that, do you? Oliver looked at Luo Yu and sighed inwardly. This time, he had truly misjudged him. Who could have imagined that his second daughter's fiancé, their Citri clan's son-in-law, was actually the Red Dragon Emperor, one of the 4 great emperors? Not to mention that not long ago, right under the noses of so many people, he had directly killed Hades, god of the underworld. Uncle, you are too kind. As an elder, you can call me whatever you like. Luo Yu replied politely. Good. Oliver nodded with satisfaction and turned to Tsubaki Shinra and the others. Since you have all come to the Citri clan, don't be shy, just treat it like your own home. Having said that, he led everyone into the Citri clan estate. This place was like a royal palace. The dining hall was luxurious to the extreme. The long table was filled with all kinds of dishes, including specialties from the human world and products from the underworld. With the variety of dishes done to this extent, even the pickiest eater couldn't find any fault. Every dish catered to the tastes of different people, ensuring that everyone could eat something they were satisfied with. It was evident that the Citri clan had put a lot of effort into entertaining them. There were also over 20 maids standing by, waiting to serve at any moment. Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka sat at the dining table, feeling quite uncomfortable, not knowing where to put their hands and feet. Tsubaki Shinra, however, looked calm, not taking it to heart at all. As for Luo Yu and Ophis, it goes without saying that they didn't feel there was anything to be nervous about at all. Oliver smiled and gave a look to the maids nearby. The 20-plus maids immediately lined up and quietly exited the dining hall. After the door closed, the dining hall immediately became much quieter. I said just now, don't be constrained, just treat this place as your own home. Oliver's tone was very casual. He was truly quite satisfied with the 3 servants that Sona had brought back. Especially that young girl named Tsubaki Shinra, whose strength was almost catching up to the heirs of those pure-blooded devil noble families. It was said that she also held a not-so-weak sacred gear in her hands. If they were to really fight, it was possible that even her master, Sona, wouldn't be able to suppress her. The other two girls were also quite outstanding. One had an excellent foundation in taijutsu, and the other was proficient in arcane magic. Not many people in the underworld knew such things. Compared to the servants that the Citri clan had previously found for Sona, they were more than just a little bit stronger. And, it was said that these three people were all taught by Luo Yu. This made one feel even more at ease. Sona, the family banquet is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. You need to prepare a bit more. This is your first appearance, so don't let other families look down on our house Citri. Lest they think our family relies entirely on your sister to hold things up. When Oliver said this, his tone carried a hint of admonition. The president's first battle. Tsubaki Shinra was stunned for a moment, not understanding what it meant. How could the terms, family banquet, and first battle, be linked together? Sona put down her knife and fork, picked up her napkin to gently wipe the corner of her mouth, and began to explain. I forgot to tell you all. It's not just my first battle, but also your first battle. There is an unwritten rule in the underworld regarding servants. Any heir to a pure-blooded devil noble family, as long as they have recruited 3 servants, must formally introduce them to the new generation of the underworld. At the same time, they must also accept challenges from certain people. Of course, it's different from the rating games participated in after the formal debut. This time, it's more about stopping at a certain point. The main thing is to show off one's strength so that other families don't look down on us. After listening, Luo Yu understood. This so-called first battle, to put it bluntly, was just seniors giving pointers to juniors, or simply coming to suppress the newcomers. It's best if you win, as you can gain a firm foothold among the new generation. It's no big deal if you lose. The most critical thing is, you must make those guests at the banquet acknowledge your strength with conviction. Sona's cheeks were flushed with a tinge of red, and she nodded gently. Father, I will be prepared. When she left home for the human world a year ago, she only had one thing on her mind, to ruin this marriage arrangement. She did not want to be bound by any chains of fate. But the things that happened over this year, one after another, had completely turned her mindset upside down. From the initial resistance, to later reluctantly bowing her head to fate, and now, to being completely convinced and willing. Things in this world really change just like that. No one can guess what will happen in the next second. Luo Yu didn't have much of a reaction. This marriage arrangement had long been set in stone. Besides, since his previous life, he had been much more attentive to Sona than to Rias Grimori. Over this year of spending time together, the feelings between the two had accumulated quite a bit as well. Although the devils of the underworld knew about the previous engagement, the House Citri had not officially made a statement to the public after all, and there were many variables in between. And back then, which devil would truly believe that the next head of the House Citri, the younger sister of the Mao, could marry an ordinary human? Tsubaki Shinra frowned slightly, but quickly relaxed. She had long been aware that her master had a marriage arrangement. But being brought up so suddenly, her heart still felt clogged. The person who had the same feeling was Rei Kusaka, who was taking care of Office nearby. This time, Oliver did not notice that the expressions of his daughter's 2 servants were wrong. As a father, seeing Sona willingly accept this marriage, he was too happy to notice anything else. As for whether the pure-blooded devil bloodline of the House Citri would end in his hands, he no longer cared much. With the current reputation of the House Citri, lasting another 1,000 years would not be a problem. As long as Serafal remained in the seat of the Mao, the House Citri would not fall. Whether or not they are pure-blooded, what does it matter? Besides, looking at the current situation in the underworld, pure-blooded devils will be eliminated sooner or later. By then, reincarnated devils and mixed-blood devils will be the mainstream in the underworld. There is nothing anyone can do about it. Pure-blooded devils are too difficult to conceive. One only needs to look at Sona to know that. It has been over 1,000 years since the Great War ended, and the Citri clan has only just produced their second pure-blooded devil in the next generation. This birth rate is so low it makes one's scalp tingle. Right now, what gives Oliver the biggest headache is actually the contract extending from Serafal. Could it be that he really has to let both sisters of the Citri clan marry the same person? After the dinner, the atmosphere was quite harmonious. The maid led them to the independent guest room area of the Citri clan estate, where everyone was assigned a spacious suite for their private use. Additional territory was also allocated. Even if they do not reside in the underworld long term in the future, there will be dedicated personnel to clean and manage it regularly. Sona did not waste time and immediately called Tsubaki Shinra and the others together to discuss the response plan for the family banquet the day after tomorrow. She is a typical tactician who believes in planning before acting. Although she did not know who would challenge them at the banquet, she had already listed everyone who might make a move, categorized them for analysis, and designed one or two tactical plans for each type of opponent. At the top of the list was, as expected, her childhood best friend and old rival, Rias Grimori. Sona felt that, given that woman's personality, it was absolutely impossible for her to pass up an opportunity for a direct confrontation. Just for Rias Grimori alone, she had put together 3 whole tactical plans in one go. In the end, the stack of plans on the table was nearly 20 deep. Tsubaki Shinra felt her head swell just looking at them and couldn't help but roll her eyes repeatedly. Well, from tonight until the start of the banquet, they probably wouldn't even have time to catch their breath. On the other side, in the clan heads meeting hall. This hall was large enough to fit a basketball court, and at this moment, only 2 people were sitting face to face. The current head of the Citri clan, Oliver, and Luo Yu. Luo Yu, Oliver spoke first. Your ancestor, the Fallen One, and I were extremely close during the days of the Great War. You should be aware of these things, so I won't say too much. Luo Yu just nodded without replying. Once the dinner was over, Oliver had called him here alone. It couldn't possibly be just to reminisce about old, trivial matters from back then. In the final battle of the War of the Fallen God, your ancestor, the Fallen One, raised his sword and struck at the Lord of War. That sword strike shocked the entire world. A human body was actually able to wound a god. Although, for the Lord of War, such a minor wound could heal in the blink of an eye. But that was enough to make countless people's jaws drop. It was a real pity that he later died under the magic of the Lord of War. The first holy sword in his hand broke along with him. Luo Yu listened, muttering to himself. If he remembered correctly, the Lord of War who appeared in the final battle of the Great War was actually disguised by Michael. It wasn't the real one at all. However, being able to wound Michael, who appeared using the power of the Lord of War, showed that his so-called ancestor indeed had some skills. At the very least, he must have had Super Devil King class strength. Cultivating to such a level with a human body, Luo Yu couldn't help but admire this supposed ancestor. I really didn't expect that his descendant would be even more talented than him. Oliver looked at Luo Yu, his tone filled with emotion. The strongest Red Dragon Emperor in history. You are too kind, uncle. Luo Yu said modestly. I am not just being polite with you. Over the past 1,000 years, I have dealt with several generations of the Red Dragon Emperor. Among all the past Red Dragon Emperors, none have been able to personally destroy Hades, god of the underworld, like you. And none of the other Red Dragon Emperors could master the strongest divine technique of the Lord of War, Eternal Kingdom. After finishing, Oliver let out a heavy sigh. 4 great emperors, you deserve this title. Previously, in the various realms, many people looked down on the title of 4 great emperors. Especially those old fossils. In their eyes, these people were just juniors showing off their power by relying on the sacred gear left behind by the Lord of War. But the fact that the 4 great emperors killed Hades, god of the underworld, not only established their prestige in the 3 realms but also slapped those who looked down on them hard in the face. It woke them up from their dreams. It made them shut their mouths honestly. If they could kill even Hades just like that, what could these old things, who couldn't even compare to one of Hades' fingers, dare to say? Oliver took out a wooden box the size of a palm. The box looked quite old, and its surface was carved with various patterns. Luo Yu could tell at a glance that these patterns were not just beautiful carvings, but a combination of complex sealing magic circles. They were specifically designed to prevent anyone from forcing it open from the outside. As for what restrictions would be triggered by forcing it open, whether it would destroy the contents or something else, could not be determined just by looking at it. Take it. Oliver handed over the box. This was left for you by your ancestor, the Fallen One. The contract on your body can open it. Luo Yu examined the wooden box in his hand, the one Oliver had just given him. He really didn't expect that legendary ancestor to have left something for him. Uncle Oliver, what exactly is inside here? Luo Yu asked directly. Oliver shrugged and slowly said, your ancestor always acted mysteriously, no one knew what he was up to. Before the Great War began, he entrusted this to me, or rather, to the entire Citri clan, saying that if something happened to him, it should be given to his descendants. He didn't explain anything else. Who would have thought that the wait would last 1,000 years? Now that you are here, it has finally fulfilled a major wish in my heart. Thank you for your trouble, Uncle Oliver. Luo Yu didn't rush to open the box and casually stored it in the space of his boosted gear. Some things cannot be rushed. The night deepened slowly. The sky was dark red, and the moon emitted a purple light, looking strange. The light that spilled onto the black earth fell on ground that had long since cracked, as hard as steel plates. The nights in the underworld were completely different from those in the human world. Roars and fighting sounds of magical beasts and devils could be heard everywhere. They were a bit more restrained during the day, but as soon as it got dark, the wildness in those creatures seemed to burst open, and they went on a killing spree like madmen. However, no matter how fierce the fighting was on the surface of the underworld, it could not affect the Citri clan at all. Those devils and magical beasts, which were no different from wild beasts, wouldn't dare to come to the Citri clan's territory to cause trouble, even if they were given more courage. The territory of a pure-blooded devil noble was not something to be trifled with. If they dared to come, they were just asking for death. Sona and Tsubaki Shinra were still busy discussing tactics. Someone would definitely come to challenge them at the family banquet the day after tomorrow, so they had to finalize the response plans in advance. Devils are different from humans. At night, their bodies and minds are actually at their most excited. Even if Tsubaki Shinra and Rei Kusaka wanted to follow the human world style and lie in bed to sleep, the cold and chaotic elements floating in the air would constantly stimulate their nerves, making it impossible for them to rest. In a room within the Citri clan territory, that ancestor was a famous fallen one in the human world, and the thing he entrusted to the Citri clan to hide for 1,000 years is actually just a spatial coordinate. Luo Yu stared at the item in his hand, his face full of surprise. It was a golden spatial coordinate. The surrounding space was constantly twisting and deforming, even blurring its shadow. Unlike the ordinary spatial coordinates he had seen before, the aura emitted by this thing was more ethereal, as if it were completely incompatible with the entire underworld space. The moment the wooden box opened, Luo Yu was stunned. The thing in front of him, although slightly different in form, was undeniably a spatial coordinate. Several thoughts had flashed through his mind. He felt that his cheap ancestor, being the original wielder of the holy sword and holding that legendary sword, leaving behind a fragment or something wouldn't be too much, right? Even if it wasn't of much use to him, melting it into his boosted gear would add some power. At the very least, it should be some kind of sword technique inheritance, right? That would be reasonable. But what happened? He just left behind this confusing spatial coordinate. What kind of sense did that make? Luo Yu was about to put this thing away and ponder it slowly when he had time. At this moment, Ddraig spoke. Partner, don't move it yet. This spatial coordinate is not quite right. Of course it's not right. It's a golden spatial coordinate, the first time I've seen one. And it doesn't mesh with the space of the underworld at all, as if the surrounding air is pushing it away. Luo Yu replied casually. If that guy Dulio Gesualdo saw this, he would probably be excited enough to jump up. But the problem is, for him, this thing is really of no use at all. You can use it to build a temporary spatial channel and see where it leads. Your ancestor wouldn't just mess around with his own descendant. Luo Yu pondered for a moment and felt that this made sense. Building a simple channel wouldn't take much time. He could check what kind of place it was on the other side. As for deeper things, it wouldn't be too late to study them later. He did it as soon as he decided. However, all necessary preparations could not be skipped. Perhaps because Luo Yu was accustomed to being cautious, over 100 magic runes were instantly engraved on the surrounding walls, then slowly faded away. This way, he didn't have to worry about anyone secretly spying, or causing any commotion that would attract the attention of the two super devils, Sears X Lucifer and Ajuka Beelzebub. In a strange place, it is always right to be careful. Luo Yu suspended the golden spatial coordinate in midair, then channeled a stream of holy power into it. The golden coordinate flickered with a faint light and then went silent. This is enough energy to open two normal spatial channels, and this is the only reaction. Luo Yu was taken aback. Such a simple, one-time spatial channel actually required so much energy. He didn't think much and poured holy power directly into that golden coordinate. But the golden coordinate was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much he poured, it swallowed it all. In no time, the holy power in Luo Yu's body was almost drained. The golden coordinate in front of him was getting brighter and brighter, the surrounding space was twisting severely, and waves of repulsion surged one after another. Luo Yu also had to divert some of his power to resist the repulsion of the underworld space. Phew, when his body was completely empty, there was still no sign of a spatial channel. Where exactly does this coordinate lead? The holy power in my body is at least several times stronger than a peak Devil King class, yet I can't even open a simple channel, and I haven't even completed the first step of activating the coordinate. That's the end of part 5. Part 6 is coming soon.
Thanks for watching my video. Please like and share it.